Hey, welcome, Escoffer. Welcome, John Eagle. Just gonna play a little guitar while everybody gets in here. Hey, Julian. Welcome, welcome. I look just like the guy that makes Audit the Audit. That's weird. You know, but that's not the first time I've heard that. People say I look just like that guy. Yeah, this is the chill police video, relax time. Welcome, welcome. I've been arguing with people on Twitter today. Hey, Electric. Hey, thanks to Electric for posting the stuff on my community post, because we're going to be talking about that stuff today. So, thanks for doing that. But I discovered today that Twitter is the same cesspool that it was like probably 2 or 3 years ago, I guess prior to the Elon purchase. Not saying that it's just a cesspool in a different way now. If Audit the Audit was a flavor of Ben and Jerry's ice cream, what would it be called and what would be in it? It would probably be called I don't know, Don't Comply. And then when you order it, they just beat the shit out of you. How do I feel about mail-in citations for minor traffic infractions? It seems like a lot of escalation could be avoided. Yeah, that would be great. And as a matter of fact, a city that's close to my hometown would be, or they do that now. They've essentially completely stopped doing traffic enforcement. And even when they see you commit a traffic infraction, they usually just get your tag number and mail you the citation. Honestly, yes, I am a Mercedes fan, but I'm not too keen on. I mean, look, I don't know how many people in my audience watch F1 or anything like that, but I'm not happy. I'm happy that we've gotten a podium, but I don't know. I'm kind of excited to see if they kick Russell out and get Max in there. Because I would love to see, like, you know, Max. I'm just not a fan of Russell. I'll just say that. What's up, Liquid? Good to see you. You should do an ATA or a live stream on the O.J. Simpson arrest. Was there something unconstitutional about that? You don't understand F1, but the radio chatter is hilarious. Yeah, that's for sure. And, you know, it's one of those things. I feel like in order to have an appreciation for F1, you have to really like cars and car culture. And eventually you just go down this path and you end up at professional racing and F1, GT3 stuff. Yeah, so that's a natural path for people who like circuit-based racing. I used to think that same thing too, DEM Gaming, and he has really changed my mind a lot in the past. I would say probably the past 2 seasons. What are we talking about? Christus? Hello, Auditing Canada, by the way. Missed what you said there. Nanyan said, I'm so sorry for your loss. Please avoid habits like Twitter. Yeah, no. I should definitely not be on Twitter. John, are you a fan of video games? Ever played Disco Elysium? I I'm a casual gamer, I would say. I used to play a lot, like, back in college, and even since then, I played a lot of PUBG with my friends. Nowadays, I really only play like racing games, and that's very casual. I'm streaming instead of playing video games or golf or doing any of the other shit that I normally like to do. So this is kind of my free time, but somehow I've managed to turn that into work too. I have a problem with that, turning everything I like into work. OJ's arrest. They went over and above not to violate his rights. Okay, that's interesting. Are you talking about when he was arrested originally for the murder charge, or was he recently arrested again? How would I respond to the rumor that I'm wearing a light blue sweatshirt? I would vehemently deny those allegations and ask you to prove it, because there's no way you're gonna get any proof of that allegation. Need a follow-up channel? Someone to go James Freeman on old cases and bullshit failures of bloated overheads. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Neo. Yes, the white Bronco chase. He's deceased now. Oh yeah, OJ did die. That's right. Didn't he? Let me look that up. I think I remember that. There's so many celebrities dying. Did he die? Yes, he did die last year. Okay. OJ's in heaven now. Okay, that's good to know. Good to know he's resting in peace. Or, well, I don't know if that's good to know. I guess I just know that now. Yeah, everything I do is suspicious and turned into a conspiracy theory. I was arguing with people on Twitter about absolute free speech and whether or not we should have that. And what I said on Twitter was, free speech absolutists are fucking idiots. That's what I said, literally, or verbatim. And that pissed a lot of people off. A lot of idiots came out of the woodworks to prove my point. It was really pretty easy to win the debate. They just basically did it for me, And I'm one of those people who are not very good at, in the moment debating. I don't consider myself a very good debater. But if I can debate you through text and I have like a moment to like really think about what I want to say, it's much easier. I'm sure that's the case for everyone. I don't know. Maybe you just got to have a certain amount of brain power to fire shit off like that, rapidly. Oh, arguing with people on Twitter is like self-torture. Yeah, I do get a bit of a kick out of it occasionally, though. Sometimes it's fun. And sometimes it's fun to just test your chops. You know what I mean? Like I used to argue with people on Facebook all the time just play devil's advocate just to see if I would be able to argue the point. It's not really about being right so much, Will Matt and Trey get sued for their free speech on South Park? I don't watch South Park. I know that they've been, like a lot of people have been talking about something about South Park and like an episode they made, but I have not watched it. I don't know what the fuck that's all about. Didn't really have time to dive into that story. John has always been, this is the law. I don't agree with it, but here it is. Yeah. But people seem to mistake that for advocating for these laws, And that's, you think I'm a master debater. Yeah, if you take the D out of that, then you're right. Debating is fun for sure. Yeah, it's fun. Even if you're I prefer to debate topics that I don't agree with because it's just so much less personal that way. and it makes it more into a legitimate debate. I don't know if any of you ever took a debate class or a speech class where you had to do debates, but they, you oftentimes have this experiment where you have to argue for a point that you don't agree with, and I think that's a very healthy thing to do, especially in today's society. People just cheat with ChatGPT in debates now. Well, yeah, I guess in text debates that is pretty easy. I didn't even think about that. Wow, man, you might have just leveled up my debate skills. No, but I debate with ChatGPT all the time. And it's actually really good for testing your own principles and seeing if you can actually hold up to what you believe in. I've almost been banned from ChatGPT several times for just having an argument with it and it being like against terms of service at some point. If you want to debate why you blocked 3 of my accounts from speaking, I didn't. Dude, you're speaking right now, and I don't want to debate you. I'm not trying to debate you, Wanda. You have to almost know what to ask ChatGPT. It's more than that. You got to be like, you have to be extremely specific about what you want it to do as well, not just what you want it to say. So like whenever I try to engage in a debate with ChatGPT, I always like set up a preference like, hey, you are going to debate this topic and you are an expert debater who is precise, intelligent, and makes rational points, blah, blah, blah. We, set up a whole like character for it to be. And it usually stays pretty good within those guardrails. Eventually, though, it seems like it always eventually just breaks down and agrees with you. I think that there's such strong reinforcement weight added in the algorithm for it that like it feels like there's eventually a tipping point where it's always going to agree with you. So you have to be careful about that. It's just AI is dangerous. And it's especially dangerous for people who aren't necessarily privy to like what is actually happening when they're talking to it, Cops in my town are using AI to write reports. Yeah, we talked about that before last time on the stream. That's scary to think, because I said last time I've seen a lot of police reports, and the caliber of writing that you find within those reports is just elementary. It's scary. It just says a lot about where these cops are on an intellectual scale, but with the help of ChatGPT, we're not going to know who's, I don't know. It's going to clean up all of that and make it very difficult to determine anything from a police report, really. Lane Myers got his charges dropped. Is that true? I don't think that's true. I thought he got sentenced to probation. I don't think he got his... I don't know. I could be wrong. I haven't checked in, but I could have swore that he got sentenced to probation. I don't think that's true, Wanda. Electric says, the tool I'm developing now is trying to kill hallucinations, and it's hard. Yeah. I know about a little bit about this, about decoherence, and just, when you're dealing with a probabilistic model, you have to deal with decoherence. I think really what's going to send AI over the tipping point is once we finally, tackle the decoherence issue with quantum computing. Probation is pending. Well, if he got probation, then the charges weren't dropped. He must have pleaded to something. Or maybe it was a suspended sentence. Or I don't know. What? The charges in New Mexico were dropped? Okay. That's not what all right. Different thing. I use ChatGPT a lot for help creating posts or to write responses to the IRS. Definitely have to check facts though. Yeah, it is terrible, absolutely terrible at putting together a critical analysis of anything. I was saying this. It's really bad about it cannot apply logic. It can work around and make it sound good, and I think that there's this there's a problem with a probabilistic model and trying to delineate logic, because logic tends to be a binary system, and when you introduce probability into a binary system, it doesn't really work that well. So it is good at giving you surface level ideas about the law and case law doctrine, but when you have to really dig yourself to get any real conclusion. You can't just trust ChatGPT to be able to parse out the logic of case law, is what I'm getting at. A company like Axon can make a killing with an AI to watch body camera footage and write reports. Yeah, seriously. That's very scary. And imagine how they would tune that AI. Or imagine if they just couldn't control it and it objectively wrote what happened. Maybe that would be a good thing. Electric says, but what scares me is when you can clone anyone's voice and generate any video. What is evidence in court? Yeah. How do judges say this is AI generated? Well, we're going to have to regulate this at some point, because you're right. That's a serious problem. I think that there will eventually be a movement in some legislative capacity to at least put a warning label on AI. Like whenever you're creating any kind of content that has AI, you have to disclose that in some capacity. Yeah, nuance is not something that AI is good at all. ChatGPT is very good at history, though, and explaining historical patterns. I haven't used it for that, so I don't really know, but I could see how it could be, because it's basically a lexicon of all historical information. I mean, it would make sense that would be a very powerful use case for it. Don't worry about spelling right, Michelle. I can barely read sometimes on here. So California tried recently and it was shut down. Well, yeah, California is not going to be the venue for getting something like that to get any legislative traction, because that is where all the tech money is. You're going to need something like that through Congress, but I mean, I don't know. It's difficult now, especially with Trump being so cozy with Sam Altman and saying that we need to lead the world in AI. I don't know. It would be a difficult path for that regulation, but I think eventually the people will demand it. Enough powerful people will get fucked over by AI to where it'll be in their best interest too. If you haven't used AI, it may just be using you. That's clever, Josh. I read that AI will be the biggest revolution since the printing press. I don't know about that. I think it's a little bit overblown. What's up, Rojais? Good to have you back, dude. But yeah, I think AI is not quite as powerful and practical as people are making it out to be in everyday life. I mean, it's a good replacement for something like Google. You know what I mean? It's like a better Google is essentially all it is. It can parse out some data, but you really cannot trust it to do things that are important. I would never trust it to do any legal analysis for ATA, for example. I would never trust it for case law or any other logically dense activity. It's just not trustworthy. You can clone anyone's voice. I've cloned our narrator's voice to make minor corrections on episodes of ATA, so we don't have to go back through the process of having something re-narrated again. You guys have probably heard a cloned voice in an ATA episode and not even realized it, because there have been many parts where the narrator sent the narration and then we had a minor change to make in between the narration being done and the video being edited. So we just use the clone instead of going through all the trouble of having to get him back and have him re-narrate a part that we did or blah, blah, blah. It just makes it so much easier. So there's a lot of practical uses for that. But you're right. It is scary that someone could essentially make a entirely fake, like phone call, for example, that implicates you in a major crime that is just completely fabricated. I think that people need to probably start being a lot more careful with their voice. I've already lost that privilege, but many of you haven't. So maybe something to consider going forward. Have I ever heard of Dr. G Explains? That sounds really familiar. Dr. G Explains. Let me look that up. Is it a YouTuber? Let's see. Dr. G Explains. Yeah, I've seen his shorts. Yeah, I've never watched any of his content, but I've seen like some of his shorts pass through my feed before. Yeah, I think I watched the first one on his thing. Axon already offers AI transcription, policy chats, translation, and what they call smart detection. I wonder how much they're charging for stuff like that. I want to introduce you guys. Hold on, let me see if I can find this. Excuse me. Because there's this kid. I don't know if you guys... Oh, now I remember his name. There's this fucking little kid that's making... oh, shit. That's making videos covering police interaction. Here, all right. Sorry. This is really messed up. This kid right here. Have you guys seen this guy's channel? I just found him last night. Like I was just perusing around. This kid is the shit. He is so cool. So, let me see. Which video did I watch of his last night? I believe his whole channel is dedicated to covering this one particular incident. He does not speak too fast for me. I love how fast he talks. I think I was telling you guys the other day that I a lot of times find myself 2xing almost every video that I watch on YouTube, but I don't have to do that with this kid. He talks the perfect speed for me. I love it. And yes, he's going to be a complete fucking badass when he's older. So I wanted to introduce you guys to his content. I really want to tell him too that 1.5 minute long videos are terrible for the algorithm. Let's see if we can watch the longer one. Yeah, here we go.
Right now in Stevens County, Georgia, there's a guy who's accused of trying to back his truck up over a cop, but video clearly shows he's innocent. On June 29th, 2024, a cop named Donnie Nelson heard this guy making a political comment in the Home Depot and followed him to his truck, which itself is pretty messed up. According to his personnel file, Nelson immigrated to the U.S. from Trinidad and Tobago. He's only lived in Tacoma for the past few years. Back in 2021, Nelson was working as a jailer in Stevens County but quit, and Sheriff Randy Shirley marked his personnel file not eligible for rehire. We don't know why he did, but this suggests that Nelson shouldn't have been working in law enforcement by the time of Home Depot. Despite this, Shirley rehired Nelson as a patrol deputy in November 2021. In his less than 3 years of experience on patrol, Nelson was a repeated
He's like a mini version of Billy from Shields of Shame, but with this like fast talking kid mentality. You know, man, what a kid. I wonder, like, I have so many questions about this content. Like, who is this kid? Who's his parents? Are they helping him make this content? Is he doing this all on his own? I mean, this is like incredibly insane work for someone of his age. It's just insane.
Disciplinary problem. Nelson was so aggressive on the job that even the fire department chief emailed the sheriff to complain of multiple instances of Nelson's hostile attitude toward firefighters. He wrote, "We cannot volunteer our time for this county and be verbally abused any further by this deputy." Nelson's police report claims he went to the Home Depot to use the bathroom. Video shows he was shopping on the job. Police told the newspapers that the guy threatened and cussed him in the Home Depot. Home Depot workers say,
"I did not hear profanity.
No threats, though.
Not that I'm aware of it."
His body camera was apparently also off, so we'll never know exactly what was said in the Home Depot. Here's another.
God, he's so good. Like, he's so thorough. We're a minute in and he's just dumped all kinds of information in that 1 minute. I watched pretty much this whole video last night. And it is, like, I can't say, this kid is going places. I'll tell you that. Like, I imagine that, I think he had 6,000 subscribers last night. He's probably going insane right now. Yeah, that's another good question. Does he edit his own videos? Because the editing in this video is also very impressive. And look, as someone who edits videos all the time, I can tell you right now, this video took a long fucking time to edit. Because just getting all the information, parsing it out in a chronological order, and the depth that he goes to with this research is extremely commendable. Yeah, please go subscribe to him. Here, I'll link his channel in the chat. But man, this dude, he's going to be the next big thing, I'm telling you. His channel is really fucking cool.
Another Home Depot employee who affirms Freeman didn't cuss or threaten the deputy.
I didn't hear any threat. I don't remember any cussing.
The judge has already ruled that the guy had a right to free speech and can't be charged with anything he said. Nelson claimed that the manager of the Home Depot asked him to give the guy a criminal trespass warning. Home Depot's employees say,
Do you know why Officer Nelson left the store and followed Freeman to the parking lot?
I do not know.
Yeah, that's a funny thing so he talks very fast, as you can see, and he did a slow motion version.
Right now in Stevens County, Georgia, there's a guy who's accused of trying to back his truck up over a cop, but video clearly shows he's innocent. On June 29th, 2024, a cop named Donnie Nelson heard this guy making a political comment in the Home Depot and followed him to his truck, which itself is pretty messed up. According to his personnel file, Nelson immigrated to the U.S. from Trinidad and Tobago. He's only lived in Tacoma for the past few years. Back in 2021, Nelson was working as a jailer in Stevens County, but quit. And Sheriff Randy
Brian from Here's the Deal covered him? Okay, that makes sense why he has so many subs now. But at the same time, he fucking deserves it. I mean, this is so funny to release a slow version of your video. No, I prefer the other speed for sure. This is way too slow for me. It sounds so like, ugh.
Personnel file not eligible for rehire. We don't know why he did, but this suggests that Nelson should have.
It's so slow now. Compared that to the...
Right now in Stevens County, Georgia, there's a guy who's accused of trying to back his truck up over a cop, but video clearly shows he's innocent.
This is a great channel. I can't wait to see this one explode, because he certainly should. Yeah, they're saying he slowed down that video for the cops. That's funny. Yeah, I prefer the faster version as well. Yeah, that kid, he got an Insta sub. Yeah, I was watching on the John Lang. You can't see it right now, but I'm actually logged into the ATA. The ATA YouTube page, so he has 2 subs from me now. Yeah, he went from 500 to 8K in literal days. He talks like he wants to tell you the cool thing he did today. Yeah, he does. I did want to show you guys this kid in case you hadn't seen him. But, I mean, I don't know what I'm thinking. You guys are probably more well-versed in the landscape of this kind of content than I am. If you listen faster, he doesn't have to slow down for you. What's up, Sirius? All right, so let's get into some of the shit I was going to talk about today. First of all, I have an exclusive police interaction to share with you that involves a sovereign citizen. Cop Talk Live made a fantastic... He's been doing great coverage of the McNeel case, and he pointed out something which Electric brought to my attention that's really interesting, that pretty much no one has mentioned so far. And this title is not clickbait. It's legit. So we covered the other day, you guys remember we covered the interaction with the paraplegic man and the blind man? Well, civil rights lawyer, also covered that. So I figured we could take a look at a little bit of his coverage of the video and just see what he had to say about it. And I also wanted to mention, ladies and gentlemen, that we have started a trend. I don't know if you can see this. Move this over a little bit. Cop Tua. Hashtag Cop Tua. We started a trend. Everyone's calling him that now, which is cool. And I guess we can. I actually had thought about flying out to this protest and surprising Sean, showing up, live streaming it for you guys. Unfortunately, I just couldn't make it work. You know, I have kids, family, job, editing, all this shit to do. So I didn't have enough time. Apparently, 2 weeks is not enough time for me to make plans for anything. But I do plan on at some point doing a little bit of a collaboration with Sean and a few other auditors. Maybe not about this particular thing, but you know. No, I meant I have my YouTube channel is my job. It is a demanding job, to say the least. The hours are annoying. Then I want to talk about this fucking piece of shit. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is Officer Tatum. I'm sure you guys saw Lackluster's, little spat with this guy. I have not seen this footage, of what he's actually said about this encounter, so I think it'd just be interesting to watch it for the first time with you guys and give my, raw reaction to it. And then we have a couple of police interactions that we plan to look at today. This is one of those as well. So first of all, let's talk about the McNeel related stuff. God damn it. My chat keeps freezing on this side. I have to keep looking over here. Sorry, guys. Have I considered updating some of your earlier popular videos? I have updated some of my earlier popular videos in ATA update episodes. If you just go on the ATA channel and search update, you'll see a couple of update episodes. And there's actually one on this channel as well. I live in Jacksonville. You've been following this one? Okay, cool. I'm a patrol trooper at night, cop watcher by day. That would be some shit. No, I'm not a cop. Never been one. His teeth look horrible now. He clearly has damages. Yeah, I haven't seen his teeth. He did say it was chipped, but I haven't seen it. So let's just see what I forget this guy's name. This guy, Izzo. That's right, it's right on his fucking shirt. Let's see what Izzo had to say, what he pointed out that pretty much no one else noticed.
Show me your hands. Here.
Right. Wait. Before he says anything, can you see it? Because I watched this a bunch of times and I never saw this. I don't know how, who pointed this out to him or if he saw it himself, but can you see what's going on right here? Anything stick out at you? That's right, Moke. And welcome.
Right there. Right above my head. I didn't see that.
Neither did I.
I didn't see that.
I don't think anyone did.
This man didn't have his headlights on, was not resisting. He was passively resisting. He wasn't fighting with them. And there's a cop above me who, gangster style, has his pistol pointed right at McNeel's head.
Good catch, Izzo. I mean, seriously. I never would have saw that. And I don't know if it ever would have even been a point that anyone else brought up. Fix this freaking chat. But yeah, I never noticed that. I don't know if you guys did. But this guy's life was actually in a lot more danger than we even thought. Oh, the chat's back to working for whatever reason. I think that's good. There's always one taser and one lethal. But the thing is like that there should never have been any amount of force, really. I mean, beyond busting out the window and grabbing the guy and putting him up against the car. I think that's... I encourage you guys to watch this video because Izzo is a very informed individual, especially on use of force. And yeah, that's true. This is all over a fucking headlight. Well, also, not just a headlight, they also claimed that he wasn't wearing his seatbelt, which probably isn't true as well, but we just have no way of knowing that. No one saw that except for Officer Bowers, I think his name was. I don't know if they have automatic lights or not on their vehicles. So let's see what Officer Tatum here had to say about this situation.
Tatum thinks that the officers used a proportionate amount of force for the situation because he's a bootlicking moron.
If you don't know what you're talking about, don't make a video about Brandon Tatum. That's it. To make a video calling me a bootlicker and all kind of other stuff when you have no idea what you're talking about according to the law. You have no idea what you're talking about according to police interactions. You have no idea what you're talking about according to what you claimed that I said and the positions that you said I took and didn't take.
All right, so I just want to say that Lackluster kind of does know what he's talking about when it comes to the law. And he kind of does know what he's talking about when it comes to use of force. And he's been doing this for just as long as I have. Granted, look, Lackluster will readily admit to you that he has a bias against police officers. He's not trying to hide that. But that doesn't mean that he's incapable of understanding the objective elements of a reasonable use of force.
Listen, y'all, the system isn't broken, it's rigged. And if you're buried in debt, that's exactly you little free, just for you. There's no minimum. PDSdebt.com/Tatum. One of my friends sent me a video last night and said, hey man, this guy is talking real crazy about you, man. It's crazy. He's saying all these negative things about you and I said, let me check out the video. And this is regarding the police incident that occurred in February that we just not hearing of it because the guy is a grifter and he want to make money off of police interaction and not because.
Oh my God. I hate it when people say this and while they're on their own fucking YouTube channel. Dude, this guy is just as much of a grifter as any other motherfucker on YouTube who has a message to send. Okay? You're like, just because you're monetizing a message, which is how all messages have traditionally been sent, doesn't mean you're a grifter, okay? You haven't missed anything, Shields of Shame, and welcome. We're doing a little bit of a late night stream, so we just started like 30 minutes ago. We've just been bullshitting this whole time, so. But it's just so, man, the hypocrisy of this idiot right here calling Lackluster a grifter. When he, Lackluster's very transparent about his bias. He doesn't shy away from it. If you asked him, are you biased against the police? He would tell you yes. What do you think this guy would say if you asked him, are you biased for the police? He would say, no, I'm objective. I don't like bad cops. But then he would go out of his way to paint a positive narrative for any police interaction that was put in his face.
Because he really cared that he was done wrong by police, in my opinion. So I'd never heard of this guy before. I don't even know the name of his social media thing. It's Lackluster, I think is what it's called, which is pretty ironic because I'm getting ready to debunk this gentleman every step of the way on this video. This is the easiest debunking that I'm ever going to do probably in my life. If you don't know what you're talking about, don't make a video about Brandon Tatum. That's it. Put your biases aside. Put your anti-police rhetoric aside. Do some research before you decide to make a video calling me a bootlicker and all kind of other stuff when you have no idea what you're talking about according to the law. You have no idea what you're talking about according to police interactions. You have no idea what you're talking about according to what you claimed that I said and the positions that you said I took and didn't take. Ladies and gentlemen.
That's a strong thing to say there. He better have some undeniable evidence to back that up. You know? To say that he has no idea what he's talking about and that he's just full of shit. Well, let's see him debunk it.
Gentlemen, get this guy on the show. I'm finna debunk him every step of the way. Roll the clip.
Welcome back to the Lackluster channel. Today's video is a response to the one I made yesterday. I released that video with the information that I had at the time, and since that video, the sheriff has released the body cam footage and has made a statement. Apparently, there's a police report out as well.
The cell phone camera footage that began viral circulation over the weekend does not comprehensively capture the circumstances surrounding this incident. Tonight, I'm sharing the footage from the body-worn cameras of the arresting officer, Officer D. Bowers, and two of the assisting officers, Officer D. Miller and Officer G. Curse.
We'll include some of that and review some of what Officer Brandon Tatum says on his Substack. Most of you know who he is and know that he can make some ridiculous claims. And in this case, it is no different.
Why does he say, oh, okay, as if that's not what he does? Look at this fucker's channel. This guy is a political talking head, okay? All he does is say politically charged radical bullshit all the fucking time. Look at all of these videos are just outrage farming from political rhetoric that has absolute, like, literally no intellectual value. That's what he does. That's an accurate characterization of this idiot.
First, he claims that the full body cam has been released, and while most of the relevant footage has been posted, we have only been granted the opportunity to view the incident from a few angles that the sheriff's office decided to show.
The currently available information and play the relevant body-worn camera.
Second,
current relevant body-worn camera. That doesn't mean that they pick and choose and show you this angle and cut this angle. It's relevant, meaning the body-worn camera that's released that shows the incident at hand. That means that if you were involved in this incident, the body-worn camera was shown. If you had no involvement in this incident, there's no need to show the body-worn camera during a...
I don't even know what he's saying. If you had no involvement in this incident, like, what are you... What the point Lackluster's trying to make is that there is oftentimes very important context that is included in the time before the stop is initiated and the time after the stop happens, and on certain officers' body cams throughout the stop. Lots of things could have been said, done, and there could be a lot of shit that can just get passed through the narrative because certain things weren't shown. If this was in the spirit of transparency, which is what the sheriff was claiming throughout the entire press conference, then he would just release the entire unredacted body camera footage from all the officers that would probably be several hours long. This is not, it's not typical. You're not releasing all the body cameras or all the relevant portions when you just release a fucking 6-minute edited compilation of a few different angles. That's not releasing the full body camera footage, and that's not done in the spirit of transparency. Talking about yourself in third person definitely makes your points sound reasonable and evenly weighted. That's true. All the relevant body camera footage of their narrative. That is right, Rojice. Exactly. releasing everything and let the public disseminate. That's exactly what they should do. But he's kind of arguing against that at this point.
A press conference. The first lie he made. Roll it.
Tatum puts in bold lettering that JSO was justified in the force used against McNeel. He follows this statement by claiming that only the palm strike was being reviewed to determine whether it was in policy, and fails to mention the several other punches inflicted to McNeel despite agreeing to exit the vehicle.
Step out now. All right.
And placing his hands behind his back.
Behind your back! I'm resisting! Behind your back!
Within his defense of complete dog shit, he claims that nothing was criminal in the officer's actions. And sure, the DA hasn't filed criminal charges. But we
Stop right there. The DA, the state district attorney's office, deemed, according to the chief, that there was no criminal action conducted by the law enforcement officers on scene, who watched the amateur video from the suspect and also watched the body-worn camera footage and all relevant footage that's made available. And they decided that there was no criminal activity. They decided there was no criminality, not Brandon Tatum.
No one said you decided any fucking thing, dumbass. You're parroting the idea that that it's a legitimate case to make that these charges aren't criminal. Surely you understand that there are implications to the things that you say. Surely you're not a fucking child and you don't understand the dynamics of just spreading a narrative. That's what you're doing, bro. No one said it was your opinion.
State prosecutor said that it was no criminality. Now, when you can't, now if the state prosecutor said that there was criminality and the officers were wrong, Buddy over here would have accepted it. But guess what he says about the prosecutor now that the prosecutor don't agree with him? Roll the clip.
The government to protect itself.
Oh, it
the
protects
DA
itself.
is often referred to as the county's top cop. No charges does not mean.
Look, why wouldn't a government protect itself against any kind of civil liability? Why is he acting like that's a crazy idea? Yeah, the government is going to protect itself against civil liability, dude. And that's the whole point of its legal mechanisms and what it can do. And the DA is part of that system. And he has every interest in not being sued and not being involved in a lawsuit that is in his jurisdiction, is under of the city that he works for. You don't see how those things are connected? If DAs did properly charge Sergeant Fahey, yeah, doesn't all stop the victim from suing and the court rule agreeing with the victim? I don't know what the fuck. Sorry, I don't know what that is saying. Be careful, John. This clown will be making a video debunking you next. Oh, I would love for that. I mean, give me free publicity. That's fine.
No criminal activity. Tatum correctly states that the law gives officers discretion to use reasonable force during arrests, but incorrectly adds that that's what we saw in the video. So,
time out. How is what I'm saying incorrect when the state prosecutor agrees with what I'm saying, and also the police chief agrees with what I'm saying, that there's no criminality afoot?
Look, man, just because you have people in authority telling you something doesn't mean that it's right. And it's funny because I think that that's probably one of the talking points that you've been pushing for your entire fucking career. Isn't your whole identity pushing back against mainstream media, against the swamp in governance? Isn't that your whole identity? Like, this is a talking point that you yourself have been pushing this whole time.
Mentioned that he will continue the investigation of whether or not it was in department policy, which I wrote in my op-ed that he's referring to. But of course he don't want to show that part because he's trying to make his own point, which is ridiculous. Roll it.
Before we watch the videos, let's discuss what reasonable force is and when officers are lawfully allowed to use it. We can start with the first body cam of the deputy that initiated the stop and compare it to Tatum's assertions. He claims that McNeel's headlights were not on and that he was not wearing a seatbelt. But the suspended license and having marijuana are facts that were only revealed as a result of an unlawful traffic stop conducted by JSO. The probable cause.
None of that is relevant. What I articulated in my op-ed is all of the circumstances surrounding his detention, arrest, and his resistance. So I don't have to separate the two when I'm talking about the totality of circumstances. All of those things he was found guilty of in the court of law. And then also, it does matter.
He wasn't found guilty of all those things, just to be clear.
If a person is driving on suspended driver's license and they do have drugs on their person. Because what? It explains why he was resisting arrest and acting a fool.
Here we go. Here we go. An interesting point that he's making here. Let's just listen to that again.
On their person. Because it does matter if a person is driving on suspended driver's license and they do have drugs on their person. Because what? It explains why he was resisting arrest and acting a fool. Wasn't because he didn't understand the law. It was because he didn't want to go to jail.
Okay. So naturally, anyone who's driving with a suspended license is going to resist arrest, right? Naturally. Anyone who's committing a minor traffic infraction, like, say, not having your headlights on during the rain, that's definitely the foundation from which people resist arrest. This is class. Like I said, this guy's a fucking clone of Sheriff Waters. He's just pushing a bullshit narrative. That's all he's doing. He's like, no, I'm looking at this objectively, while simultaneously and insidiously using subliminal wording and framing to paint a specific picture in your mind when you hear his narrative of what happened. He's not being objective in any way, shape, or form. And again, I'm not saying that Lackluster is being objective here. What I don't like is that one of these two men is honest about their bias, and the other one, this fucker, is not. Not at all. He makes money off of pissing people off with his shitty opinions and doing what the cult, the political, ideologically captured people in this country want, which is just to exist in a fucking echo chamber.
Therefore, you can paint the whole picture in the totality of circumstances, roll it.
As stated by the deputy, was that his headlights weren't on. But again, the law states during any rain, smoke, or fog.
All right, well, before he says whatever dumbass shit he's about to say, I made a video about this, and we talked about this on the last stream, I think it was, or maybe the one before that. During is the operative word here in this statute, okay? And I could see there being an argument in his defense of saying it wasn't raining right then at that moment. And that's why he wasn't required to have his lights on. I've seen actually some attorneys arguing that point, and I think that would be a valid point of defense. But I also think that if you were arguing on the other side, you could say that during rain is vague. So although during is the operative word, when you pair that with the relatively subjective idea of when it's raining, there could be some wiggle room in how that's interpreted. And so that's the main thing I was trying to say in the last stream. Again, I'm much better at articulating myself in writing than just off the cuff like we're doing here. But that was the major point I was trying to get to in the last video. So it's a strong defense to say during any rain. I mean, that's the operative word. And during, it has to be during, as in rain falling from the sky right now. But I do think that if I was in the prosecution's seat, that I would say, well, I think the intent of this law is when you combine the operation with what it's describing to be operative. And so that leads you into a bit of subjective territory. And so that's I guess the main point I was trying to get there. Tatum is no different than any other extremist far-right group. He is okay as long as you believe in him. Well, that's how it is on both sides. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to disavow conservative influencers. I have no dog in the political commentary race, if you will. But I do see, objectively speaking, there are idiots like this, Republican talking head we're looking at right now, this ultra conservative guy. And there are idiots on the left that are just as bad as this guy who spout absolute nonsense about their own political ideologies. So, it goes both ways. There's idiots on both sides of the aisle.
Time out. Inclement weather, rain, smoke, fog. It also talks about sunrise, sunset. There's reasons that you have to have your lights illuminated. He did not have his lights on. He did not deny that his lights were not on. He did not skirt these charges when he went to court. Now, they decided to keep him on the bigger charges and dismiss the other ones because the other ones were criminal. So you don't try to charge him with both. But he still was found responsible. He did deny responsibility. No one has said that the officers were wrong on the initial traffic stop. Why?
Well, I think
why,
before he says whatever he thinks is why, is because McNeel, you got to remember that this happened in February, all right? And he went straight to court right afterwards and made a deal and served 2 days and got out. He didn't think of this. He wasn't thinking like, were my constitutional rights violated? He wasn't thinking I need to get an attorney and launch a civil rights lawsuit, or I need to contest the reasonable suspicion of this stop. And that's not what most people think when they're involved in police interactions. And granted, we do have a much more informed society than we did, say, 5 or 6 years ago. But it's still pretty normal for people to go through a terrible experience with the police and just write it off and move on with their lives. Just because no one said anything about it or no one contested it in the beginning doesn't mean that we can't retroactively scrutinize it. So it's kind of dumb to make, in my opinion, this is a dumb argument. We can argue against shit later. Just because the guy who was involved didn't contest it doesn't add validity to whether or not the stop was lawful. Most people want to get back home and go back to work. Exactly. Most people don't have time to argue about traffic stops and the legitimacy of it. They like McNeel did. They just want to go and get it out of the way. He served 2 days and that was it. And that says a lot about how seriously they took his crime.
I'm going to prove to you that this is inclement weather and it was raining. All right, Nick, let's get the exhibit ready because you're going to hear this guy talk about it. You see people say it online. It's the most asinine and ridiculous claim. It's because they hate police and they always want the police to be wrong, so they will make up anything. It wasn't raining. Look at this video. This is fresh rain droplets still hanging onto his vehicle.
Again, we're going back to the operative during word. Okay. Raindrops on a vehicle doesn't mean that it's raining outside. And that could very well be a strong argument for him not having to have his lights on. And, bear in mind, like everyone keeps pointing out, there's no cops with their lights on either. No one has their windshield wipers going. No one's getting wet. We don't see rain accumulate on this car as we're watching this video. So to make the argument that during, if you're coming from the argument that during is the operative word and largely dictates the entire statute, then this is a moot point. It doesn't actually mean anything.
If somehow it wasn't inclement weather, which means it wasn't raining at all, you wouldn't still see rain droplets on his car.
Okay, he's making a lot of assumptions here, which are, granted, are reasonable inferences to make, but in the world of dissecting police interactions, you can't just make assumptions like this. We don't know exactly where this fucking water came from. He could have just got out of a car wash for all we know. I mean, of course, he would say that if that was the case. But the point I'm making is the officers on the scene can't use water droplets as evidence that it has been raining because there's literally hundreds of innocent explanations that don't involve rain whatsoever to explain raindrops. So I don't think that that would bolster their argument for reasonable suspicion if the statute is interpreted with during being, the all-powerful operative word there.
Inclement weather doesn't mean that it's only inclement at the instant that it's raining.
Yeah, but the statute doesn't say anything about inclement weather. That's just a random word that's being tossed around by everyone. It doesn't say that at all in the statute. There's no inclement weather clause in the statute. It says during rain, smoke, or fog. That's the collection of words we have to work with. Inclement weather, it doesn't mean anything.
And then if it stopped raining for 30 minutes or 30 seconds, then all of a sudden it's not inclement anymore.
But see, this is actually, I think, a relatively decent point. At least a point. I think it's not a point that's going to win it, but I think it's honestly the only point that can be made from the prosecution for this is that raining doesn't mean, or rain can come and go. It's when it rains, it doesn't always rain constantly. Sometimes the rain is lighter, sometimes it's heavier, sometimes there's just a drizzle, sometimes there's a lot of rain, sometimes there's no rain at all for a second, and then it's raining really heavy again. So that's the only argument I can see in favor of the prosecution for this. But again, the statute's pretty clear. During is that's a strong word. I think it's subject to a little bit of wiggle room, but during is a very strong word. Oh, we made a follow-up 18 minutes ago? Well, maybe we'll tackle that too if you guys are interested.
It's not just the rain. It's rain and rainy conditions. That's what...
See, he just made that up. Rain and rainy conditions. No one said, there's nothing in the statute about rainy conditions. This is what I was saying about him being so much like Sheriff Waters. And this is so funny because this is like a hallmark of grifting. This is like gaslighting 101, inclement weather, raining conditions. These are irrelevant to the analysis here, okay? These are just fluff words that don't mean anything at all. So just bear that in mind when you hear this shit, because he's probably going to say a lot of stuff that does not exist anywhere in the analysis for a case like this.
The hazardous lights.
By the way, I just want to say, I'm not an attorney, not legal advice. Don't be a dumbass. All right.
Putting your lights on is for the conditions that's associated with rain. When it rains, visibility is lower. There's rain on the streets. People need to have better visibility when driving. That's what the spirit of the law says. That's why no one contested that he was pulled over rightfully.
I agree that is what the spirit of the law is, but it doesn't, like, the spirit of the law is essentially sidelined for what the letter of the law says in most cases. All right. The spirit of the law is kind of secondary to what is actually written, especially when you're like parsing out a criminal case. Because you want to figure out, did they actually violate the law? That's the question. Not, did they violate the spirit of the law? It really needs to be, did they violate the law or not? That's the question you're asking, okay? The law, not the spirit of the law.
You would not have rain droplets on your car if it had not been raining. The ground is wet. It is raining, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe it stopped raining for a small period of time. That does not preclude the justification of having your lights on during inclement weather. All right, let's go back to the video.
None of which were present. And as to the claims of not wearing a seatbelt, the officer transmits over the radio that he didn't have any details about the occupant or occupants of the vehicle.
Hold on.
Prior to
having any details about the occupant or occupant's vehicle has nothing to do with visible observation of a seatbelt in a traffic light.
Okay, I kind of agree with this point with him here. Whatever the officer is relaying through the radio isn't necessarily a dead to rights implication of what he was visually observing. He doesn't have to necessarily translate, hey, this guy's not wearing a seatbelt. He could very well say, I didn't get a clear look at him, but I definitely know he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. That's a possible and plausible observation to make, you know, especially if you're passing someone going the opposite direction. You just glance at into their window. Oftentimes, all you can really see is like neck to chest and where a seatbelt would go. So I think it's entirely plausible that he did maybe witness a seatbelt violation, or at least think he did. But again, I don't believe it. I think this whole stop was just predicated on this cop wanting to stop this guy. I can't see that. It's just interesting to me that he opened his door, looked out of the car, got back in it, and then put his seatbelt back on. I think that he did that because he just instinctually fucking puts his seatbelt on, like every person, you know? So I don't know. I don't know if I believe that he saw the seatbelt not being buckled, but I definitely think it's possible for him to have saw that if it was true. And I don't think him getting out of the camera. Well, they take his seatbelt off, but remember when he first opened the door at the very beginning of this interaction, he was almost completely out of the car. He was not seatbelted in. But when he got back in the car, he did put his seatbelt back on. Again, I just think that it's totally possible for the cop to have witnessed a seatbelt violation, or at least witnessed something that led him to believe that a seatbelt violation had occurred that could have been the part of this stop. And him not communicating that over radio isn't really evidence of him not having made that observation.
Not having your lights on, not having, I guess, information about the people in the car means that I didn't get his driver's license. I didn't talk to him. I'm not sure if there's other people in the car. It's not that I didn't see him driving with no headlights on and no seatbelt before I pulled him over.
Yeah, see, I agree with that. I happen to agree with that. What's up, Direct D? Good to have you in here, brother. I happen to agree with that. Like, you know, what he says over the radio is not an implication of what he actually saw.
Just for reference, he got pulled over. This is the result of him getting pulled over. This is where he stopped. The cop observed his lights not being on and observed him not having a seatbelt on. So he conducted a traffic stop. He pulled here.
This is cop-splaining, isn't it?
And stopped. What are we saying? The cop is pulling him over because of his observations of the no seatbelt, in which the suspect never denied. Roll the clip.
McNeel opening his door.
Yeah, Florida 2-4, bro.
That's a really good point, Moke. He says nobody at this moment knows when the cop had observed this, so even Tatum can't say that. Yeah, we don't know if he actually observed the violation, but what Tatum's argument is here is that he was ultimately charged with the seatbelt violation, which he did not contest. I believe that he pled to that violation, and there was the other one. I think it might have been resisting without violence, but that's the point here that he's trying to make.
Bravo, Echo, Charlie, Whiskey on a silver Kia. I know how it goes.
These two facts eliminate all probable cause for the entire stop, which means everything that occurs after this moment was unlawful.
See, I don't agree with that take from Lackluster. Again, I think it's entirely plausible that the cop could have legitimately witnessed a seatbelt violation, and we do not have enough evidence to dispute that. Maybe if they had released the entire body camera footage or the dash cam footage, perhaps, we would have enough information to make that distinction, but to just rule it out as impossible simply because the cop said that he didn't get any information on the driver before the stop, that to me doesn't lead to any like legitimate conclusions that there was no seatbelt infraction.
Hold on. It's a lie. I just disproved that. I just proved inclement weather, which the court agrees with me on, and everybody would.
What? The court agrees with you on that? I don't know about that.
The brainstem does. And then I just proved that the seatbelt violation, the officer observed seatbelt violation. He was charged with all these things, and he did not deny any of these claims. He only denied that well, it's not raining. That's not the totality of the
electric. Again, I want to make this clear for everyone who's kind of lost on this aspect of it. When the cop first approached McNeel's vehicle after he initiated the traffic stop, McNeel opened his door and turned around in the driver's seat to face the cop. Both of his legs were basically out of the car. At that point in time, I don't believe he was wearing a seatbelt. Let me pull up the video. So that we can just check it out for ourselves. All right. Right here. This is the point they're saying he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. See where he reaches out for his door.
Step out of the vehicle.
See, we can't even see the seatbelt. So I think this gives a lot of deference to them to say that he wasn't wearing one. We never even see it in the original video. You'd think you'd see one right here somewhere. But again, like I said, I think it would be weird for him to get back in the car and put his seatbelt back on like that. So maybe he could very well be wearing one right here. But the fact is that we don't know. And if the officer is just saying he wasn't, then we need to have some evidence to prove that he was, you know? Is this the seatbelt clip right here? I don't know. The point is, it's not clear. It's not clear. So it becomes a talking point for this guy. He's armed with this one fact, you know? And the problem is that one fact kind of justifies the initial detainment. Because if the cop is saying, hey, you didn't use your fucking seatbelt, and you have no way to show that you weren't, it's going to be hard to defeat that in a courtroom. Drake D says cops can't use seatbelt violations as probable cause for a stop in Arizona. That's fucking awesome. I wish they would do that everywhere. I fucking hate that seatbelts are such a, like, this is the problem. We have a society that's so highly regulated that we're allowing the government to regulate our own safety. Who is put in danger by you not wearing a seatbelt? Just you. The seatbelt laws should be for kids, for vulnerable people who can't make the decision whether or not they want to live or die that day. You know, we don't need laws that protect people from themselves. The same way that, like, you know, I don't even know if I could say this fucking word on YouTube, but the same way that taking your own life should be something that is your decision to make. It's a terrible decision to make, and no one should ever make that decision. But I don't think we need the government to tell us that when we are and aren't allowed to do things like that. If there's no one, if what you're doing can only possibly hurt you, then there shouldn't be a regulation against it. It'd be like, you know, making it illegal to drink bleach. You know, I mean, obviously no one's going to do that. We don't need a law about it.
Weather statute. But when he said you didn't have a seatbelt on, he didn't deny the seatbelt violation that one time. And then there's people that's going to say, well, they pulled the seatbelt off of him when he got out of the car. Yeah, because when he shut the door and was getting crazy and pulling his camera up, he put his seatbelt on. That's what he did. So he could say, look, I
mean, we have no way to dispute this theory. You know, that's all I can say about it. We have no way to dispute that. So this is a point that he can actually make, and I think is a reasonable, I guess a reasonable point to make.
I had my seatbelt on, but you didn't have your seatbelt on when you got pulled over. Roll the clip.
Only occurred because the deputies on scene were untrained as to their profession, but even worse still, is that the responding officer was not wearing a seatbelt, and several of the other backup units also failed to use their headlights. It's a good thing that...
Time out. You can't make this up. The responding officer wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Well, police officers, anybody that know anything about policing, when you pull up to a traffic stop, many cops, when they hit the lights or whatever, they take their seatbelt off. Police officers are exempt from traffic violation laws in certain circumstances. Why would an officer pull his seatbelt off while he's conducting a traffic stop? Because if suspect number one takes off running, you can get out of the car and react. If suspect number one pulls a gun on you, you can maneuver and react. Cops do not have to wear a seatbelt when conducting a traffic stop if they believe or deem that it is reasonable to take the seatbelt off.
No, again, I can't dispute this point. I think this is, I think it does feel like bullshit at face value that cops can just not wear their seatbelt and then arrest people for not wearing theirs. But, we do have to give police officers some degree of privilege in order to do their job more effectively. And I mean, I can't disagree with what he's saying here. It makes sense for an officer to unbuckle their seatbelt as they're arriving to a traffic stop. The light aspect, though, I'm interested to see what he thinks about that.
For all these various reasons that I mentioned. And then when we talk about headlights, the lights and sirens control the lights of the vehicle. They control the lights of the vehicle. So when you turn your lights on, it takes over headlights, upper lights, and all kinds of lights. Also, officers are not obligated, depending on the circumstances, to follow traffic laws. They have to drive with due regard, and they have all of these exemptions that you can find right in the law. You can look it up yourself, or you won't.
Now, I agree with the first part of that. That, obviously this is coming from a place of actual police knowledge. This guy was a cop, and he's saying that when you operate the LED box that controls all the lighting, that it changes the way your headlights work. It takes over the entire vehicle's lighting. I don't know shit about that. I've never been in a patrol car or operated the lights or anything like that. So what he's saying very well could be true, but I think it's interesting, and it's probably a safety issue if your front headlights are turned off by your LEDs. That's kind of wild, especially if you're rushing to a fucking place, in the middle of traffic. Dude, like, we need the headlights on. If that's a function of the lighting system, then the lighting system needs to be revised, because that's dangerous. Your front headlights are the main lights you need. We could do it without all the rest of this shit if you just had front flashing headlights, I'm just saying that, like, that's dangerous if that's the case. But secondly, yes, officers are exempt to some degree of traffic infractions, but not ones like this. You don't just get to go driving around in inclement weather and creating a safety hazard for all the other drivers on the road because you're a cop. That's not how that works. That's not how the emergency exemptions work. Generally, cops have to follow all the very same traffic laws that everyone else does, unless there's a specific emergency that they're trying to respond to. So, the second part of that point is fucking retarded. That's stupid. That's a dumbass point to make. And if you do look at the law, which I'm not going to look it up right now. If somebody wants to, we can look it up. But I guarantee you that those laws say only in the case of an emergency. So there's you don't get an inclement weather exemption, since we're throwing out bullshit terms here, as a cop. Direct D says they can't ignore traffic laws unless under specific circumstances, one of them being when their lights are in use and heading towards a call or an emergency. That's true. And that's a very narrow exemption. But he's trying to say, he's basically painting out the picture that cops just don't have to obey traffic laws. Basic ones that keep everyone safe.
Want me to give you the chapter and verse, I can. But officers are not obligated to abide by all the traffic laws, especially when they're responding code 3. Only
when they're responding to an emergency. Pretty much every other time They do have to obey by the traffic laws.
Responding to an incident. That's why you can see a police officer sitting on the side of the road with no lights on. That's why a police officer can respond to the scene and go past the speed limit. If the officers had to abide by every traffic law, then they'll be in trouble right now because they were speeding to get to this thing.
If
a person decides to drive off in a police officer, they can't pursue because then they'll be breaking the law of going.
Oh my God! Let's just ignore the emergency part of this, dude. What the fuck? This guy's an idiot.
Over the speed limit. There's exemptions from officers in the law depending on the circumstances, and these circumstances don't necessitate police officers to follow every traffic law. Roll the clip.
It wasn't unlawful to do so, but let's pretend that it was. And by refusing to identify here, McNeel was breaking the law.
Yes, sir. Is there a reason why you're popping the door open like that?
I don't have a window that works. Is there a reason that you're pulling me over?
Yeah, absolutely there's a reason why I'm pulling you over. For one thing, inclement weather, you don't have your lights on. Two things, you're not wearing your seatbelt.
It's daylight. I don't need the lights. And it's not weather.
Stop. It's daylight. I don't need the lights, and it's not raining. That's not. He's wrong, right? Daylight is not the parameters here. And then you can see rain droplets on his car. So while he was driving, it is raining.
I think you should do that, Direct D.
So none of that that's a moot point. Roll it.
It's not raining.
This is inclement.
It's not raining.
No, I kind of agree with this though. Like, don't McNeel. You know, I say this all the time. You don't litigate a fucking traffic stop on the side of the road. Okay, sitting here saying no, I wasn't doing that. Blah blah blah. What? Just let the officer talk himself into a hole. It'd be much better to try to steer the conversation if you're even going to speak beyond what's required. Wouldn't it be better to make the case that you know, like, well, prove it. Like, what evidence do you have to suggest that I was doing that? Not just saying, no, I wasn't. We can argue about this right here, right now. You know, this whole thing, like what McNeel did here, arguing with the officer about what he was stopped for and then ultimately closing the door, that was dumb. That was stupid. And no one should ever do that.
Okay, I'm not arguing with you. I'm telling you why I'm pulling you over. Give me your driver's license, registration, proof of insurance.
No, call your supervisor. Why?
Excuse me?
Call your supervisor. Why did you pull me over?
77, 35. I'm properly driver. I've already told you.
Why did you pull me over?
Step out of the vehicle.
No.
Step out of the vehicle.
Specifically, this would be resisting, obstructing, and delay in Florida, as they do not have a refusal to ID law. Next, Tatum thinks that the officers used a proportionate amount of force for the situation, because he's a bootlicking moron.
The law requires...
I gotta give it to Lackluster. He's right about that. This dude is a fucking bootlicker, like, to the core. And it's funny that he said that, just like that. I gotta give it to Lackluster. Hell yeah.
Requires that a person comply with the police officer's commands during a traffic stop.
To understand why, let's look at the law that Tatum fails to explain in his obvious GPT article. Reasonable force is determined by two cases, Graham v. Connor and Tennessee v. Garner. Together, they've created use of force guidelines for...
This guy, you know what's funny? I wish I could see, I don't know where he published this article that, they said Substack. Let me see if I can find his Substack real quick. Because I bet that this fucking post really was ChatGPT written. Oh yeah. Okay, let me show you guys this. Because we were having this conversation about ChatGPT earlier. Surely you guys know what it looks like when you're looking at something that was written by ChatGPT. And one of the hallmarks of ChatGPT's writing style are these M dashes. It uses them constantly. You can see it. No one who writes articles writes like that. No one uses the M dash this fucking much. Okay? You see it here. There's another one. There's another one in the title. And the bolding, very clearly ChatGPT. The way this is broken down into point by point, all he did was delete the emoji that it puts up after this. I bet you I could read this article and reverse engineer it with a prompt. I'll give you that. I'll just say that. This is hallmark ChatGPT writing right here. Oh yeah, and the colons too. It really loves to say qualifying statements like that. Let me be very clear. Colon. Here it is. Here's my point. You know, this is ChatGPT all over this. Look at this. An M dash with a colon with bold. I mean, this was written by ChatGPT. Thanks for stopping in, Wanda. Good to see you. So yeah, I think Dale's right for calling him out on that.
For law enforcement,
Okay.
first, the court must judge the officers based on the Fourth Amendment's objective reasonableness test. This requires
funny,
officers to base their use of force on the totality of the facts and circumstances. Here, the entire case for the deputies fails immediately due to the insufficient probable cause.
Hold on. The state attorney's office deemed that they followed the law and there was nothing criminal in their use of force.
And they have done that many times where they ultimately got sued for millions of dollars. Okay? They have, just because the authority figures who have everything to lose by deeming this an unreasonable use of force are saying that it is, doesn't mean shit. We'll actually see if it is or not in the federal case that's coming up pretty soon. That will be the distinction of when we determine that. Some random fucking DA in some random fucking town is not the ultimate authority on whether or not this use of force was valid. And there have been many other attorneys who have the exact same credentials as a DA to say the exact opposite of that. So I don't know where he's getting this idea that just because a DA said it makes it true. Lee Simmons says, you can't have it both ways. Tatum said he never denied he wasn't wearing his seatbelt, which means it must be true then to say do not litigate on the side of the road. Yeah, I guess. Sorry, I didn't comprehend that very well. Electric, again, they investigated themselves and found no wrongdoing. How many times have we heard that phrase? Yeah, here we are, just taking the word of the people who have everything to lose from this interaction being an unlawful use of force.
Where is this guy getting his theology from? This is not something that hasn't been litigated yet. This is not a brand new occurrence. This happened in February. He brought his complaint like a couple of days ago or whatever when he released it.
Again, the length of time doesn't matter because the sheriff's office wasn't proactive in investigating this use of force. That's the only reason we got the big window of time passing between when this event happened and when it was brought to the public's attention. I want to break this back down for you guys just so you understand why the sheriff's office is the reason that this is all fucked up and that we don't know about this until now and nothing is being done until now. We covered this on the press conference. Sheriff Waters clearly said that his use of force protocol in his department is that if there's a use of force, that patrol officer who used the force has to file a report. That report then goes to a superior who will then watch the body camera footage themselves and deem whether or not that use of force is worthy of an internal affairs investigation. Guess who cleared this use of force? The day it happened, or at most a day later. So the department had already said there was no wrongdoing, and they blamed McNeel for not putting in a complaint about the use of force and tried to say that that was justification for not launching an investigation. We should have departments that we can trust to point out unlawful uses of force whenever they come across the supervisory team's desk. And that's not what happened here. So to try to use the window of time that elapsed between this event happening and all of the legal fallout is not a legitimate excuse for, or is not a legitimate, it doesn't add legitimacy to the argument that this was a reasonable use of force at all. Again, this is just deflection, fluff, nonsense.
This video, This was investigated internally, investigated from the state's attorney's office, and they deemed that there is nothing there. Now, you could say Graham versus Connor and the use of force case law, but none of that applies here clearly because they were.
Gerald says, ChatGPT, write me a false narrative as a corrupt sheriff. That's funny.
They were all deemed to be acting according to the law within reason. Roll the clip.
Echo Charlie Whiskey on a silver Kia. I know not this.
But if the vehicle extraction was lawful, the amount of force used must take into consideration the severity of the crime, whether the suspect poses an immediate threat, and whether they were actively resisting or attempting to flee.
Graham factors.
By now, you may have heard that McNeel had a knife, but who the fuck doesn't? It was never in his hand, and upon review of the video, he never even reached for it, despite
this is the thing that people don't think about with him. He has a big serrated knife that's probably 12 inches long on his floorboard. Who rides around with a knife like this? It's not reasonable to have a knife like this. People in the comments say,
what is he arguing for, disarming Americans of their knives? What is he saying here? Is he saying that we shouldn't have knives, or that like anytime anyone has a knife, they're immediately a threat? Granted, this is a fucking wild knife. I mean, like, he's right. People don't usually just ride around with this kind of fucking knife in their car. That's usually like hung up on some neckbeard's wall. But nonetheless, it's a knife. We have a right to carry knives. And when we start using objective, rights like the right to carry a knife as justification for unreasonable uses of force, we're going down a very slippery slope there. And it's interesting because I guarantee you this guy is probably one of the biggest Second Amendment advocates you've ever met in your life. But he thinks that knives are incredibly dangerous to people. This, we have a right to arm ourselves. We accept that knives are a part of American society. Knives do not suggest criminal activity or a direct inherent threat. Okay? People just carry knives. And this is a dumb way to lead down. This is a dumb path of logic to go down that's ultimately self-defeating, especially if you're a Second Amendment advocate. Just in case you run into a mechanical issue. Wait, what are you talking about? Oh, that could be a reason for having a big knife. I mean, yeah, maybe his car's overheating. He might have to cut up a radiator hose later. I mean, there's a bunch of like reasonable explanations for that knife. I'm just saying it looks fucking wild, He never went for the knife. There were cops on both sides and didn't even see it until afterwards. That's the biggest point, though. And that's the biggest point, is this knife is irrelevant to the analysis of whether or not the stop was lawful and whether or not the use of force was lawful. This knife means nothing because it was never a factor in determining whether or not to make the stop or how much force to use. Okay? So this is like, even bringing up this knife is there's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. It has no relevance to this case at all, in my opinion. Because the cops, no one saw it until it was, fruit of the poisonous tree. That's right, Billy. No one saw this knife until after everything had happened.
Section or anybody watching this, how many of y'all drive around with a hunting knife this big laying on your floorboard? Nobody carries a knife like this. That means he can't, but that also speaks to his character and speaks to the danger that was present when they were.
How does having a fucking knife in your car say anything about your character? What does that say about your character at all? When we live in a country where you're allowed to have much deadlier weapons on you at any time. So what is he saying? That having weapons in your car speaks to your character? Does this motherfucker not walk around with a pistol in his car? I guarantee you could ask him, hey, what's your EDC? And he's, SIG, whatever, like this is are you pro Second Amendment or not? You can't just say people are criminals because they have weapons. That's not, that's why we have the Second Amendment.
Conducting the traffic stop. Who knows? He probably wanted to pick it up and stab the officers, but he didn't have the courage to do it. You don't know. But
my God. You hear that? Who knows? He might have. He probably. He said probably.
Probably wanted to pick it up and stab the officers, but he didn't have the courage to do it.
What kind of an allegation is that? That's a strong thing to say when you don't know fucking shit about this McNeel guy. You don't know anything about what he was thinking, what he was doing. Like, where are you getting that from? That he wanted to harm an officer just because he had a knife in his car. That is just the greatest leap in logic. He's a fucking idiot. Oh my, yeah. Just pure speculation. Disparagingly so.
You don't know. But this is a dangerous, deadly weapon that he has right on the floorboard. And if you watch what he's doing, he's not cooperating for a large majority of the video that he did not play. All the times when he shut the door and the cop was like, you're under arrest, get out the car, get out the car. Who knows? He could have pulled that knife from somewhere else. You can't see what he's doing in the car.
Exactly. You don't know. So why is it the logical conclusion to say that he was dangerous? Like, why is that your first thought? This is the problem with the culture aspect of policing, is that, this is a big problem with the culture aspect of policing, okay? They always assume the worst. The most criminal explanation is always the best explanation from their perspective. And that is the problem. You can't walk around in normal society where 98% of people don't commit crimes, and then think that almost everyone is going to have the capacity to commit a major crime or hurt you in some way. This is not the logic that we want cops to be following. It would be better to have a more middle of the road stance with this. Don't think that every person that you come into contact with could potentially kill you, okay? But don't think that every person that you run into is your best friend either. You got to have a reasonable mindset when you're doing police work, and it doesn't exist on either extreme. And what this guy is saying right here is it just exacerbates that police culture of us versus them mentality. It's the thing that we should be trying to defeat. It's the bridges that we should be trying to build, not tear them down with this kind of rhetoric. Domineer, good to see you. The knife is under stuff. Yeah, it's under shattered glass. That's what that is. That's so true. Gaslighting like crazy and making associations that are fictional. That's right, Billy. Let's see. He was at gunpoint. That's another good point to make, is that he was at gunpoint as soon as that other cop arrived. He could have been shot at any moment. John Felix response? I don't know. I don't know what he said now, but no, I don't have a response for him. He's a fucking idiot.
That knife could have not even been there. The knife could have been in the back seat. The knife could have been on the passenger seat, and he pulled it over there and put it on his foot. These things do matter in the totality of circumstances. That's how irrational this guy was in the present danger that the officers were in. Just say that this is a deadly weapon. Just say it was a gun. It's the same premise. Well, he wasn't reaching for the gun. But he got a gun right there that he could pick up and use against the cops. He got a knife he could use against the cops. These things do matter in the totality of circumstances when you're evaluating this circumstance. Roll it.
Officers lies on the police report. But we'll return to that point in a minute. McNeel was at best passively resisting an unlawful arrest and never attempted to flee. And the severity of the crime was so incredibly low that nearly every officer that responded to the scene was in active violation of the same law McNeel was originally pulled over for. No headlights, no headlights, no headlights. Not to mention that one...
That doesn't matter. I already said it is exempt. But when it comes to saying that a person is passive aggressive, this guy, the thing that reasonable people in the courts look at is, what is the officer's observation of what's happening? If a person is just sitting there like this, that does not mean that they're not a threat. The threat level...
What? if you're just sitting there peacefully, not doing anything, you can be considered a threat. So, but what, by this logic, what exactly wouldn't constitute a threat then? If literally sitting there doing nothing could be interpreted as a threat, what in your mind could possibly not be interpreted as a threat? What could a citizen possibly do that would be low enough on the threshold of your fear that would satisfy non-resistance? Is it just, it seems like in this guy's mind, there's either utter compliance or total resistance. He's looking at this whole situation like it's a fucking binary. Okay? No, that's not how it is. Like, you can passively resist. That is a real thing that is even codified into Florida state law. There's a difference between resisting with violence and resisting without violence. Those are two different crimes because they describe two different actions. Okay? And now he's saying that just sitting there doing nothing, it can be seen as resistance, as active resistance that justifies a physical use of force. That is lunacy. Lunacy. That's crazy talk.
Is that the person is non-compliant for the last X amount of time. When they knock the window out, if the officer want to stun him while they're trying to open the door, that's nothing wrong with that.
It's so crazy because I thought this guy was actually going to have a decent point on the use of force, but he's actually trying to defend the only part of this that is very clearly an unreasonable use of force. Let's go back to the video here, and I'll try to get to the spot where they break his window, which I think is down here. So again, I said this in my video and in the live stream, but I don't believe that breaking the window was an unreasonable use of force. Okay? The punch that comes afterwards, that is an unreasonable use of force. They're like stunning him. Why did he need to be stunned? What degree of resistance was he giving them that would justify a stun in that situation? You're essentially green-lighting less than lethal force on someone who's doing nothing in terms of resistance. But if this fucking idiot had an ounce of intellectual value to add to this conversation, he would be disputing what happens afterwards. Because here's where I think there might be an argument for the officers to say he was physically and actively resisting us. Because what happens afterwards, when they get him out, he's saying, no. They're telling him, get on the ground. He's saying, no, don't touch me. And you could make the argument here that he is refusing their order to get on the ground. That's what, if I was the prosecution, that's what I would say. Is that, okay, maybe there was an unreasonable use of force at the beginning, but once he got out of the car and they started ordering him to the ground and they had to wrestle him down, that was a reasonable use of force. And I showed you the Florida case law where once they basically establish that they give you an order and they want to control your movement, the 11th Circuit has given them a lot of leeway to as far as how much force they can use to effectuate an arrest. We looked at a case last time where they got a guy out of the car over a traffic violation. He refused to sign the ticket, and the officer pulled him out of the car, got him handcuffed, and once he got him handcuffed, he just laid on the ground. The cop couldn't get him up off the ground. And he was like, if you don't get up, I'm going to tase you. And he ended up tasing a man who was doing the most passive and unthreatening type of resistance you can possibly do. He was belly down with his hands cuffed behind his back, and the officer tased him 3 times. And the 11th Circuit ruled in favor of the officer as that being a reasonable use of force. So in a situation like this, where they could have this subjective interpretation that he was actively resisting them by not immediately getting to the ground, that would be the point that this dumbass talking head right here should be making. And I hate that I'm playing the devil's advocate on his behalf, but I just want to show you the level of intellect you're actually dealing with here with these fucking rhetorical talking heads. You know, there's no amount of true real thinking. He doesn't have to think because his audience doesn't think. They just listen to what he says. So the bar for his content is so incredibly low that it's not appealing to people who can actually critically think about situations. So he's not beholden to any degree of standards for the kind of garbage that he makes. People are just going to watch it. The Graham factors, the force wasn't justified for the minor offense. I totally agree with that. But we're talking about a different offense when we get to, if they're going to argue that this was resisting, active resisting, then maybe they could have charged him, and they probably should have, if they were going to make that argument, charging with resisting with violence. But I don't know. Maybe the fact that they didn't charge him with that says a lot in this case. But that's again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because this guy is not capable of making a salient argument on this situation. So I guess I'll do it for him.
You can stun the guy to get him disoriented, to get him out back, so you can unlock the door and take care of business without you just sitting there jangling with the door. Hold on, man. You good? Okay. You got a knife or gun in there? You grab it while I'm doing this right here. If an officer believes that, hey, let me stun him real quick, get his, whatever you call it in law enforcement, get his OODA loop off, so he's kind of dazed, and I'm going to do the door, and we're going to get this thing done. We're going to pull him out of the car.
No, you don't just get to beat the shit out of people. You don't get to hit people in the face like that just for your own protection, just because you're afraid. All right? If that's the kind of fear you walk around with as a police officer, you shouldn't be a police officer. If you're that afraid of someone sitting in a car, seatbelted in, doing nothing, then you don't need to be a cop. Because being a cop's a scary job. You got to have some balls to do that job. And what they did here was just some scary ass bullshit. They were obviously afraid for no reason.
The officer can deem that that's necessary to execute an arrest. When you've never done this before and you don't know the height, suspicion, and things that go on like this, you would be like, oh, you just did it for no reason. Well, the courts evaluated and they didn't agree with you. Well, not the courts, but at least the prosecutor's office, they didn't agree with you.
Okay, and again, that doesn't mean shit.
Roll the clip.
Once the door was opened and he was ordered out of the vehicle, McNeel responded with, all right.
Step out now.
They said, first of all, he's resisting. They told him to get out 7 or 8 times already. He said, he not. They break the window out, get out of the car. He refused. He got the door is locked. He's not opening the door. They had to knock the window out to get him out. Then they had to open the door and pull the seatbelt off of him to get him out. And people say, he had a seatbelt. No, he put the seatbelt on during this traffic stop to cause this problem, right? Because then they can't just pull him out. They got to undo the seatbelt and all that. He refused to get out. Then when they go to pull him out, he go, okay. But then he says, they go, put your hands behind your back. He said, no, don't touch me. He said, no, don't touch. He's holding his arms.
Wow, he finally got there, guys. He finally got there.
Resisting arrest. And this guy saying he was compliant. No, he wasn't. Roll it.
All right.
And likely would have allowed the deputies to remove him, cuff him, and put him in a cruiser. But instead, 3 deputies pulled him in opposite directions while they punched him and threw him to the ground. In fact, when viewing the body cam frame by frame, McNeel can be seen putting his hands behind his back before saying, no, don't punch me.
Hold on. Listen to this guy. He said, McNeel said, no, don't punch me. Where does he get no, don't punch me? If a guy is wrestling with the cops, he's not saying, no, don't punch me when nobody punched him. He's saying, don't touch me.
Okay. I mean, I'll be honest. When I first watched the video and what I've heard every time I watch the video is no, don't touch me. I didn't hear no, don't punch me, but let's see we got the video right here.
Yes, sir. What is your reason? Step out now. All right. No, don't touch me.
I mean, honestly, it's really hard to hear what he's even saying there. I can't.
What is your reason? Step out now. All right. Get on the ground. Don't touch it. Get on the ground.
I don't know. He gets punched right in the middle of saying it. It's kind of hard to hear. So I'll try it one more time. I'm going to turn my headphones up a little bit.
All right. Get on the ground. Don't touch it. Get on the ground.
Yeah, I can't make out what exactly he says there. I don't know why I assumed he said, "Don't touch me." Yeah, it's very difficult to. I don't know if I would believe either person here on that. I don't, it sounds unintelligible, like the captions are saying. So I don't think that there's a really good argument to be made either way for that. Lackluster called him out. Yeah. Billy, you heard "Don't touch me" as well. Yeah, that's what I heard at first, but now that I'm really listening to it, I really don't know what I'm hearing. And maybe I'm just getting confused because I'm explicitly listening for it. But again, I still think because what he said is not real clear, that this is a good point to make if you're on the side of the cops, is that once he got out of the car, maybe he engaged in active resistance at that point. Which could, as 11th Circuit case law shows, could lead to a lot more leeway as far as what kind of physical force they were allowed to use in that moment.
He's telling them, "Don't touch me." And this guy is saying,
"Oh, did they write? Did they have subtitles there?" No, this is the same video. It says unintelligible. And that's accurate. I can't tell what the fuck he's saying.
That he said, "Don't punch me." The transcript that was put into the video associated with the body worn camera has "Don't touch me." I hear him.
Where is that at? Where's the transcript? Can someone find that? The transcript for the interaction? Because if that's the case, why didn't they include what the transcript said in the official body camera captions? Because that's interesting. I didn't know that there was an official transcript for this interaction, but I'd like to see that.
Him say, "Don't touch me." Why would this guy say that he said, "Don't punch me"? It's the craziest thing ever. Roll the clip.
Well, he said it. He said the guy said that, but for the same reason you're saying that he said, "Don't touch me." You're both trying to make an argument over something that's not clear. So it's totally reasonable for Lackluster to conclude that the guy said, "Don't punch me," and it's equally as relevant for this guy to claim that he said, "Don't touch me." I mean, we don't know. The word is unintelligible. So I'd like to see the transcript he's talking about, where then we would have at least a relatively objective point of reference for what he's saying here.
They forced his arms behind his back.
But despite Neil saying don't...
Time out. They forced his arms behind his back, and just because they got his arm here, he's still resisting. He's not here with his arms behind his back. He's resisting, and they're pulling his arms behind his back.
Yeah, also look, though, that he's falling forward with both of his hands on his sides, right? And if you look right here, this cop has a hold of his legs right here. He's obviously about to go face first onto the ground. And any person in this situation would instinctually put their hands out to catch themselves. But what is he doing? What is he doing in this exact moment? He has his hands behind his fucking back. He's not resisting. He's about to fall on his face, and he has his hands behind his back because he'd rather allow his hands to be behind his back and hit his fucking face on the ground, which probably chipped his tooth, than have to have these cops beat the shit out of him even more for not resisting. I bet it's taken everything in his body to resist the biological urge to catch himself from this fall, and instead put his hands behind his back. So this is a weak ass point from bootlicker Tatum here.
He's not complying. Complying would be, As soon as he got out the car. No, he said, no, don't touch me. And then they pulled it and one hit him in the face. Like, they had to wrestle this guy to the ground. He's looking for a payday, clearly. He wants to fight. He wants to get it out so he can say, oh, they abused me and I want a payday. Roll the clip.
Punch me.
You see, you can't hear it from any angle either.
No, don't touch me.
Step out now. All right.
Stop, pause it. Go back a little bit, Nick.
Yeah, see, okay, hold on. Let's just
All
see.
right, right there. I want to play the little words in this guy's video. Play it. No. Watch this.
Step out now. All right.
Pause. Even in this guy's own notes on the side, when she added, don't punch me, it say, no.
Okay, I think I know where he's going with this. And first of all, I do agree that it's a bit disingenuous to just categorically claim that he said, don't punch me. We don't know that's what he said. And that's, a bit of a stretch to just, throw in your own captions of what you think he said. But again, this is lackluster. He's going to give the ultimate deference to the citizen, not the cops. And he's very open and clear about that. And I happen to agree a little bit with this. What I think he's about to say is him saying no a bunch of times means he's resisting. But we talked about this before when we covered this originally. Saying no could mean a lot of things. Like, no, I can't believe this is happening. No, this shouldn't be happening. That could have been what he meant by no. And he could have equally have meant, no, I'm not going to listen to your commands. But no could have meant a lot of different things in that moment. And to boil it down to one side or the other, I think is disingenuous. Because we're not McNeel. We don't know what he meant. So we can't draw, it's purely speculative, even on the behalf of Lackluster, to claim that these no's are not resisting, just as much as it is for him to claim that they are. This is a word that can be interpreted either way. And it's not really the word that matters so much. It's what he literally did. He can say whatever the fuck he wants, and it's not resistance. Resistance is a physical act. So these no's are kind of irrelevant to the larger picture, but I could definitely see a prosecution and a defense having a big debate over what he meant by saying no. So again, I think that this is a bit of a moot point on either side. The no could have meant anything, and I don't think that it would add any legitimacy to the notion that he was necessarily resisting. What he's physically doing is the point, but this is just language that would color either side of the argument. He could say, no, I don't want to be a victim here. And the defense could easily paint that narrative that that's what he was saying. Or he could be saying, no, I'm not going to listen to your orders, which of course is what the prosecution would say. So kind of I think that this is a bit of an irrelevant point to be arguing if you're discussing the efficacy of this stop and whether or not the use of force was lawful. Here I have to side with the cops on what they believed in their state of mind, and I'm not saying it's right. The cops will be given a pass by the courts on the second excessive force part. I suspect that there won't be a pass necessarily, that this will probably resolve with a settlement, considering that Ben Crump is the attorney. I don't think that the state's going to fight very hard on this. But, I tend to, I don't think that, I don't know. My initial reaction just by looking at this video is that this is not active resistance, that he's trying to respond, but he's being pulled in a bunch of different directions, being given a bunch of different commands, it's honestly, he's involved in a very chaotic moment that's difficult to comply with. So I can't really make any judgments on whether or not this is active resistance. I mean, my initial reaction is that it's not. But I could definitely see there being a compelling argument made for it that it was.
They're saying, put your hands behind your back. No, 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 no. He's saying, no, no, no. He's resisting. Don't touch me. That's what he's saying. He's resisting. He didn't get out and comply. He didn't get out and say, okay, officers, I'm giving up. Here, I'm putting my hand behind the back. He gets out and stands up and said, don't touch me. And he's resisting. And it takes 3 or 4 officers to force his hands behind his back. And he would still be standing up fighting him if the officer didn't check him on the chin, which that officer believed that you don't.
No, I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that punching him in the face is what led him to the ground. When we saw that freeze frame earlier, they grabbed his legs out from under him and had both of his arms and got him to the ground, which is what they should have done in the first fucking place. The punch was totally unnecessary, in my opinion. And I don't think it made this any safer or was a legitimate use of force in that moment. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone, so no one should have been trying to hurt him, is the way that I see this.
Utilizing that level of force is what executes the arrest. And did it or did it not? He was fighting. He was standing up. They trying to get his arms behind his back. When he hit him on the chin, that's when he complied and went down to the ground passively. He still wasn't putting his hands behind his back where they can handle.
Family account. I just said this. Don't touch me is not. It's not resisting. No words are resisting. It's a physical act. What I'm saying is these words right here could color the argument either way. This is an irrelevant point is what I was saying.
Handcuffed. All this is happening in seconds. Now, people who prosecute this stuff and people who are reasonable understand how this stuff happens in seconds. There's a slight delay, right? Meaning that don't do this and the guy says boom. He could be doing boom while they finally got his arm here. This stuff is happening in seconds. So a prosecutor is not going to look at this and say, well, technically, if you look at the 1/100,000th of a second, he kind of punched him as his arm was going back. So technically, his arm is back and his fist is here.
I mean, okay, he's trying to make a legitimate point here, and I'll clarify a little bit of what he's saying. He's saying that we can't analyze a use of force with the privilege of hindsight. And the courts have addressed this many times in many different cases, but that is a legitimate thing. Hindsight is 2020. We can't analyze a use of force based on what we now know. The courts say we need to put ourselves in the officer's shoes to determine if that was a reasonable use of force. And that's where the objective reasonableness standard even comes from. So that's that's something to consider, but in my opinion is kind of irrelevant to what actually happened here. The objective reasonableness standard is basically a plaything for the courts at this point. I mean, they justify all kinds of uses of force under the objective reasonableness standard, and that's largely the bane of qualified immunity. So it's a relatively, it could be a legitimate point, but it's not relevant. It's a legitimate point to say that, yes, we can't view this use of force in hindsight, but I don't think that we need to. We can look at it in the shoes of the officers as it happened that day and conclude that this was way out of hand. Coast Audit says, I was full felony stopped and set up for bullshit. Yeah, a lot of people are. Send me your video. I'll take a look at it. Waco Cop Watch says, when police say stop resisting, everyone leaves the person is resisting. I think everyone believes the person is resisting. Words matter and police know it. That is a good point. When you're just sitting here screaming, stop resisting, that definitely says to the other officers, hey, this guy's resisting. And they're immediately primed that any movement that they feel or see is definitely going to be resistant. So that's a valid point to make.
Right on hit his beard, hit a little string of hair on his chin. Technically, it contacted his body at the 1/1000 millionth of a second. And then in his mind, he was thinking about complying, so the officer was wrong. Nobody's thinking about that. These things are happening, and they give leeway to officers on the circumstances and how fast things are moving. Roll the clip. Once he hit him, he went down.
Clerk added subtitles that read, "Don't touch me."
Ah, okay. So the subtitles did say "Don't touch me." That's where we get this official transcript idea. That's interesting because it's weird how it's unintelligible anywhere else, but here in this one body cam, he says "Don't touch me."
Seconds before being punched,
let's see that. Let's see if we can find that moment in the original video. Do they show that? Oh no, that's not in the angle that he saw. But yeah, let's go back a little bit.
Seconds before, "Don't touch me." Seconds before being punched.
We don't know what he said there. And I really hate that this is like a big point of contention. I think it's a weak part to argue what he's saying. And it's not really relevant to whether or not he was resisting anyway. It just colors the argument. That's it. I think that this is dumb that they're even arguing about this particular point.
A second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh time.
So stop right there. This dude has a problem with the punches in the thighs. First of all, that's not the same officer. The responding officer back there was punching him in the thighs to get him to comply, to put his hands behind his back, fully compliant. It's not compliant because your hands are not here anymore. It's not compliant when your hands are here. It's not compliant when your hands are here. It's not compliant when your hands are here. It's compliant when your hands are where the officer wants your hands so he can put the handcuffs on.
It's literally impossible to comply. It's just impossible to comply in this fucking guy's mind. Thanks, DirectD, for reminding me about that. If you could drop a like on this, I would appreciate it. But think about the way that this guy's parsing this out, that there's no such thing as compliance until you're in the exact position the cops want you to be in. Okay? There's no such thing as compliance. Hands to his side there. Punches. Look where his hand. Look what was happening with his hands. As soon as he gets done with these punches, hands are back there. That was gonna happen whether or not this fucking dumbass cop was punching this guy in the ass. And also, wouldn't it be more pertinent to control the movement of his legs than just beat the shit out of his butt? Like, don't you think that it would have been a better use of that officer's force to control the guy's legs instead of punching him to get his hand? Like when is that? Punching someone in the butt is not a signal to put your hands behind your back. And I don't think anyone would interpret it that way. Okay? And he was already on the ground, head pinned down. Look at this cop right here. Head is pinned down to the ground. He's down, head pinned. Head pinned. Whole time he was getting punched. Head pinned down. That was totally uncalled for. Punching him in the butt.
Just because your hands are near your back doesn't mean that you've complied. So officers hitting him in reasonable leg strikes to get him to comply fully with their commands to put your hands behind your back so that they can handcuff him. And this guy's not on the ground with him, so they don't know the level of resistance that he's putting up against the officers.
They don't know the level of resistance, so they just assume that it's time to beat the shit out of him, huh?
You can't see it. You're not there. You're not physically on this guy. If he was not resisting, it would have taken one officer to put his hands on his back. But all these officers had to jump on him. One had to punch him and do all this just to get his hands on his back. And it's not unreasonable for an officer to hit him in the legs to get him to comply. Now, if you see him complying and the officer still punching him and beating him and hitting him in the face, then we'll have a different scenario.
That's exactly what we fucking saw. That's exactly what we saw just now. He goes down, head's pinned right now. This guy hasn't even thrown a strike yet. Head is pinned down. Arm out to the side. This cop right here isn't even trying to control his arm. This arm is blocked from even going this direction by two different cops. Punches. When he looks up, where are his hands? Right where they want them to be. And his head has been pinned down to the ground the entire time. That's exactly what we just saw.
And the officer's still punching him and beating him and hitting him in the face, then we'll have a different scenario. The officer's punching him in the legs. Once he feel like the guy has fully complied, he stopped punching his legs. That's reasonable. He wasn't punching him in the face. He wasn't trying to elbow him in the spine. He was punching him in the thighs to get him to comply. Reasonable use of force based on the officer's belief that they're doing what they need to do to execute an arrest.
Now, the question of whether or not was it a reasonable use of force largely comes down to the analysis of whether or not he was actively resisting at the time. But like I said, we looked at those 11th Circuit cases that even when you're on the ground, belly down, fully handcuffed, they can still use force on you. So I think this is a bigger problem with the way use of force analysis has been taken on in the courts than it is like how officers are using that force. It's problems on both sides, for sure. But we need the courts to hold the officers accountable. If we did that, then the culture of policing would change around use of force. But they're just being given licenses to fuck anyone up who doesn't immediately comply with their commands.
Simple, man. Roll the clip.
Same clerk added officer unintelligible when the officer yells clearly, "Stop fighting," before punching McNeel in the legs and lower body several times, though McNeel already had his hands behind his back despite being punched.
Time out. He don't have the right hand behind his back. The officers.
And the reason he doesn't have that right hand behind his back is because this cop failed to control that hand. So we went back, we saw that. Well, fucking YouTube. You saw that. His arm was right here. Look right now. He's got his hand on his arm. He's under control.
Pulling his left hand behind his back. His right hand is not connected to his left hand. His hands are not behind his back like this. One is halfway behind his back being pulled by one officer. The other one is not even behind his back. It's kind of hanging out to the side.
So the act of compliance has to be immediate, unceasing. You have to get your hands behind your back and in a proper position immediately, no matter what's going on with your body, or else they have a license to beat the shit out of you. Yes, police can detain you for nearly any reason and can use force at the drop of a hat, but people keep voting the same two parties, so it won't ever change. It's not really up to, I mean, it is in a way because, well, as of late, the Supreme Court has been, politicized. But for a long time, the judicial branch was one of the few branches of government that wasn't entirely dominated by politics. Now, it was in a lot of ways, but they still came to reasonable conclusions that were bipartisan in nature. That hasn't been the case lately. But it's not politicians that are controlling how law enforcement officers are able to act, really. It's mostly the courts. So I would blame the judicial branch for the state of what is acceptable uses of force and what isn't, and a lot of the police misconduct that we see today.
He's resisting. What do you mean his hands are behind his back? Because you see one arm that had to be forced back there, you're saying his hands are, no, one arm is forced back there. The other one is not even connected where you could put handcuffs on him. It's still hanging off to the side over there. His hands are not behind his back. Roll it.
Faced twice, thrown to the ground, and having his face mashed into the pavement. After the incident, Deputy Bowers wrote in his incident report, "The suspect was reaching for the floorboard of the vehicle where a large knife was sitting. This was obviously written to obfuscate the truth so idiots like Tatum would point and say, "See, had knife," and to justify what he already knew was excessive force.
Not one time, and I'm gonna be done with it now because it's pointless. I've already debunked everything he said in this video. No, it's more. I'll play a little bit more. But not one time did anybody say that any justification was even argued because he had a knife in the car. People only brought up the knife, including the sheriff, was simply because they're explaining the totality of the danger in this situation. The guy's literally resisting arrest for several minutes, shutting the door, locking the door, and doing all that, and he has a knife on the floorboard. This guy which is a deadly weapon in close proximity to him.
There's no reason to mention the knife. If we're just looking at whether or not this was a legitimate use of force, yes, the totality of circumstances are going to come into play. But again, like this idiot mentioned earlier, we have to look at this through the lens of what the officers knew at the time. And that this is a hindsight argument. The totality of circumstances only applies to what the officers thought at the time, what a reasonable officer would have done at the time. So we don't get to go back now and bring up the knife as if it had anything to do with this use of force. No one knew about the knife. No one did. This was all over and done with by the time they figured out he had a knife. It wasn't a factor that was considered in the totality of circumstances for evaluating whether or not this use of force was lawful. Again, just want to make you guys aware that I'm not an attorney. This isn't legal advice, and don't be a dumbass. But, it's kind of interesting that he's backpedaling on this whole idea of, well, we can't be looking at this in hindsight until we look at the knife, which is in my favor, is part of my narrative. He looks scary. So apparently Tatum served on the Tucson Police Department from 2010 to 2017. And during that time, the department received 186 excessive force complaints over the course of 6 years. Interesting. I see where he gets his knowledge from then. He's drawing from experience here.
But that doesn't have nothing to do with anything else because nobody argued that. I didn't argue it in my op-ed. The sheriff didn't argue it. Nobody's arguing.
I love how he's calling this fucking ChatGPT article an op-ed. That wasn't an op-ed, dude. You just typed into ChatGPT. That's all that happened. You're not some fucking great intellect, and you're not you're not out here changing the discourse of society with your ChatGPT renderings, man.
That they did this because he had a knife. They're just explaining that this guy had a weapon in close proximity. And I don't know what the officer saw. I wasn't there. They're the ones undoing the thing. They could undo the thing and see the knife right there. They may not.
Welcome, 33rd. Good to have you back, my man.
Want to draw attention to the knife because they don't want him to grab the knife. I don't know. But you wasn't there. You're going to have an uphill battle to try to argue that the officer did see or didn't see something when he was right there. You're not going to win that in court. The officer can say, yeah, I saw it, but I didn't want to say nothing because I didn't want him to grab the knife. I didn't want to draw attention to it. The officer can say whatever you want to say. The fact that you're not there, you don't know what they saw.
Yeah, okay, except for every time there's a weapon during any police stop, they always yell, knife, 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 or gun, 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 knife, knife. Isn't it common protocol for officers whenever they see? How would it benefit the other officers for them to not know there's a weapon in the car? If that's the whole point of this, if he was dangerous with that knife, how is it the most efficient thing for officer safety to not let anyone know about the knife? That's just crazy. Welcome, Dannon. Electric says, we weren't there. We were there from 8 different angles. Yeah, good point.
And what they were feeling and what their justification was. It's really according to what they said, and the limited body worn camera can give you insight in part to what they thought, saw, and feel, and the reason why they reacted the way they did. But here's another, it goes a little further, and I'm gonna finish it here. Roll it.
Face it, if the officer didn't know that it was excessive force, why lie about it in the report?
Soon after McNeel was outside his car, officers found a large, unsheathed serrated knife on the driver's side floorboard.
I forgot that the chief mentioned that. He just explicitly said that after the officers got him out and onto the floor that they found the knife. Let's listen to that again.
Excessive force. Why lie about it in the report?
Soon after McNeel was outside his car, officers found a large, unsheathed serrated knife on the driver's side floorboard.
They found a large, after he was out of the car, I'm vaping a Juul, after he was out of the car, after is the key word. Oh, trust me, I know you're not supposed to vape. I'm not a healthy person whatsoever. Nicotine's good for your brain, though.
But the fact is, the deputy knew that the incident was being recorded from inside the vehicle, which clearly showed that McNeel never even so much as glanced towards the knife.
Pause. This is exactly rebutting his own point. The officer knew McNeel was recording. He had his own body-worn camera recording. Now, why would you think an officer would tell a complete lie when he know the guy's recording it? He know the guy's recording when he did with the palm strike. He know the.
What are you talking about? Why would the officer lie on camera? Officers lie on camera all the fucking time. They lie on their body camera. They lie in narrative reports. They lie all the time. What do you mean? You just think that every officer on every police force is an honest person? And don't get me wrong, not every person on the police force is a bad person or a liar. But we can't just assume that they're all not lying either. They're people. People fucking lie. People fuck up. They make mistakes. They get out of control, like what happened here.
The guy's recording that because he said, I'm recording too. So you think the officer, knowing that video evidence is there, knowing his body-worn camera evidence is there, and you think he's going to just make up a lie? When an officer takes the body-worn camera off, you load it onto a dock. That dock is downloaded by a third-party company that makes hundreds of millions of dollars storing footage of body-worn camera. I wish I'd have came out with that job. But cops can't review it. There's no video, there's no computers and stuff typically. Now, I don't know what technology has come to today, but when we were there, the body-worn camera just had came out.
None of this is relevant to whether or not a cop would lie on camera. It doesn't matter that there's this whole protocol where they can't alter the footage. That doesn't mean they wouldn't lie on camera. Those are two totally separate points.
And guys used to take their body on camera, put it on a dock in the briefing room where they charge. And when you put it on the charger, it downloads to a third-party company that we don't have access to unless before you request it. Well, not for you request it, but we have to request the footage. And then the footage don't go to you, it go to the records department. The cop don't get it. It goes to the records department. And then it's, I don't know how many hours of footage that's on there. And it's available to the public. Anyway, I wanna hit this last point and I'm done. Roll it.
I don't even know. He didn't even make a point about that. He just said the process for how to upload body camera footage as a cop. He didn't even make a point. What was he even saying there? Please just, let me know what the fuck he's even saying.
I want to get to the Tyree Nichols thing, and then we could be done with this. Yeah, let's get to it. So he just says all this other stuff that's pointless. Talk about compliance, whatever. Then
he just says all this other shit that I can't rebut. So we're gonna skip to the points that I have prepared for.
Then he gets to this part. Play it.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If you comply, you won't die. It's as simple as that. Funny, he said the same thing about the murder of Tyree Nichols, who was beat to death by several cops while laying motionless in handcuffs.
He didn't comply. He did. I made the video and said the officers were wrong. Anyway, he don't even watch the videos he's talking about. I made a video saying the officers wrong and they deserve to go to jail and all this other stuff, which they did. And they beat the guy and some of them end up being responsible for killing him. The others were responsible for other crimes that they were charged with. Nobody's taking up for them. Nobody's supporting these officers, whatever the case may be. But he didn't comply. That's how he got from his car.
Okay, not complying is not a license for police to kill you. Okay? I don't know in what world we would be making the argument that non-compliance should mean death. What are we coming to as a country when we think that simply not obeying an order from another man is a license to kill you, especially from the state, from the government? Again, this man, Officer Tatum, is likely a Second Amendment advocate. And everything he's saying here is contrary to the narrative that supports Second Amendment rights. I just can't imagine blind compliance being the only solution that this fucking idiot can come up with for how to not die in a police interaction. And if we're to the point as a society where you not complying over a minor traffic stop could cause you to be dead, that says a lot about us and about people who think that that's a legitimate way of thinking. This guy right here, this kind of talk from people like him is incredibly insidious and dangerous. And this, I can't stand it when people say shit like that. Just comply and you won't die. That's the least American thing you could possibly say. Our whole fucking country was founded on non-compliance. We didn't want to comply with the state. And that's how we got America. And you're sitting here saying, you're basically arguing for the red coat logic here. And saying that America should have never been a country. The UK should have just wiped everyone out that was over here in America instead of like engaging in a discourse with them at all. This guy is a danger to society. This kind of thinking is dangerous to society. And you couldn't get more narrow and you couldn't get a deeper lack of nuance in a perspective than just comply or die. Don't forget about the civil rights movement and the peaceful sit-ins. Yeah, and I said this before. Peaceful protesting has been a thing, and it has paved the way. You know, people always bring, whenever you make the argument that America was founded on the ideas of non-compliance and civil disobedience, or not even, just disobedience. There wasn't much anything civil about the Revolutionary War. People always bring up, well, the greatest movements ever were nonviolent, like the civil rights movement and Gandhi. They were nonviolent on behalf of the people who were protesting. They weren't inherently nonviolent. There was a lot of violence associated with those movements. It just wasn't on the behalf of the people who were a part of those movements. So realistically, there's no such thing as peaceful protesting, because it will always amount to some degree of state-sanctioned response. And we exist in an entirely different society now than we did then, as far as the efficacy of peaceful protesting and whether or not that actually has an impact on the political systems that we live in. And the fact that we've been having this issue with policing since the 80s is a testament to the idea that peaceful protesting isn't fixing this fucking problem. We've had numerous protests, both peaceful and unpeaceful, about the way that law enforcement are doing their jobs. And I still have a job critiquing the way law enforcement officers are doing their job. The only reason I'm here right now in this room on this camera with you all is because we still don't have a functioning format for policing the public. So you can sit here and argue all day for peaceful protests, non-peaceful protests, whatever. None of that shit has fixed the fucking problem. Bubba Smith, thank you for the $2 New Zealand dollars, I'm assuming. Would the US be better if it had stayed British? Fuck no. Fuck no. I'm grateful for the disobedience of my forefathers and for establishing this country. As fucked up and flawed as it is, I'm happy to be here. I wouldn't want to be a citizen of any other country. I think America aligns the most with my values. Maybe that's a product of me being raised here, but there's no other country on this earth like this one right here. And so, no, I wouldn't have it any other way. Let's finish this out. See what this fucking idiot has to say.
To under a street light down the street because he fought the officers at the car. Then he ran and fought with the officers under the street light. They just so happened to use excessive force against him. What do you mean comply? He didn't comply. Compliant, they think compliance is I fight you until I start losing and then no, that's not how it works. Compliance is that.
And he thinks that compliance is blindly and immediately activating robot compliance mode, and you're just supposed to know exactly what the cops want you to do, and you do it before they even have a chance to use force on you. That's his idea of compliance.
You're under arrest. Get out the car. Yes, sir. Get out the car. For you to get in a foot pursuit with the police, you're not complying. Tyree Nichols will still be alive. I put my life on all these situations. Tyree Nichols will still be alive if he had gotten out of the car and got arrested like a normal person. Instead of fighting the officers, running, he escaped them.
That's not the point, though. He shouldn't be dead for just getting out of the car and running away. That's the point. Okay, we could sit here and say all day that because he decided to get out of the car, he ended up dead. But you're leaving out the nuance that's important, the context of that entire interaction, which was that a man that was just running away lost his life over nothing. This is, again, the most disingenuous arguments you could possibly make to justify this is what this guy's doing right now.
They fought him. He escaped them. And
Michelle says, just send this piece of shit to North Korea already. I know, right? If you want to live in a society where blind obedience is the norm, go live in fucking North Korea. Go live in a communist-dominated country. Apparently, you don't like freedom. This isn't the country for you, Officer Tatum.
He ran, and they chased him. He didn't just get out the car and juke. They were fighting, and he was fighting them back and wiggling and hitting, and then he escaped, and they ran him down. So, and then they used excessive force. But if he would have just stopped and got out the car, he'd still be alive. I just had to go point by point on this guy. It's irrational for people to act and be like this. The facts are there. You can hate the police all you want, but you got to go off the law. That's why people get their butt hurt when officers don't get charged. It's like, yeah, because you're not following the law.
My God. The level of hypocrisy on display here is just unmeasurable. To say that people complain about the police not being charged and that because it's the law is the reason is insanity. The reason cops don't get charged is because they all work for the state that would charge them. It's not in the state's best interest or a city's best interest to vehemently pursue the officers on their own force. They're basically providing ammunition for a federal lawsuit in that case. We have an entire system that's set up for police officers to have maximum deference, both in a practical sense and within the courts. Okay? That's why people are bitching about cops not being prosecuted. It's not because the cops were following the law. That's not the issue. If that was the case, we wouldn't be having this argument. He deserves this because law's headlights. Yeah, that's where that's basically what he's saying. So cops get to play executioner because someone broke the law. That fucking dipshit. Yeah, that's exact. Yep. Can't even. I feel you.
The law says a cop can do this, this, and this within reason. The law says a cop
Within
can
reason.
shoot you if you do X, Y, Z.
Within reason.
The use of force policy says this. If you
Within
read
reason.
the policy and if you looked at the law in the state, you will see that there is no problem with what the officer did. That's why he was acquitted. And if you were reasonable, you wouldn't be shocked. You'd be like, yeah, I see, according to the law.
First of all, the officer wasn't acquitted. He was just never charged. Which means that he could very well be charged in the future. They're just saying that they're not pressing charges now. The AG's office said that. So I highly doubt there will ever be any criminal charges. But he wasn't acquitted. That was not the case. Yeah, this is literal insane behavior. And now he's just an hour ago, he posted another video about this. So we might as well check that out too. It's only 12 minutes long.
I just saw, there's that viral video going around about the guy whose window was smashed. I mean, what could you just because you brought it up, could you explain to me how that was okay?
Your adrenaline is out of control because you think I can be killed at any moment right now. I can't.
That's the problem. And that's the problem. Thank you for so eloquently illustrating that point here, Officer Tatum. The problem is that you think you can be killed at any time. That's the problem. Stop thinking that way. There's no reason for you to think that way. Being a cop is not even close. It's not even close to being one of the most dangerous jobs in America. That mindset is part of the fucking problem.
See this guy's hands. He got the windows rolled up. Is this going to be my moment where I'm going to get killed and I'm never going home to my family?
If you think like this, don't be a cop. But the problem is they're trained to think like this. I bet a lot of them don't think like this until they go through the police academy.
But I still get backlash. People still are mad at me, even though I've been right about every.
Because you're a dumbass and you're not right about everything. That's why people are mad at you, because you're an idiot.
Police thing that I've covered. This video is brought to you by Synergy Life, Become a man today, all right? It's America, and let's get strong, baby.
Just because you just mentioned it, I just saw, there's that viral video going around about the guy whose window was smashed. I mean, what could you just because you brought it up, could you explain to me how that was okay? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, okay and justified according to the law is two different things.
Michael's a bit of a libtard, so I'm just
tell me, I want to know.
No, it's totally fine. I think everybody should question these things and they should hear viewpoints, right? Subjectively, a person may think that it's not okay to strike people no matter what. Subjectively. Objectively, you have to look at the law and the justification for use of force against people at any given time. The totality of circumstances, in my personal opinion, would lead.
He keeps saying I don't think he understands the totality of circumstances and what that concept actually means and how it applies to use of force and the objective reasonableness standard. I don't think he knows what the fuck he's talking about as he keeps mentioning the totality of circumstances. Because again, I said this earlier, and I'm going to face cam for this because I just want to make this point very clear. The totality of circumstances is based on what the officers knew at the time, not what we now know based on the totality of circumstances. So that the application of that doctrine, and I'll go ahead and throw this up here. The application of the doctrine of the totality of circumstances only matters according to what the officers had knowledge of at the time of the interaction. The whole reason for him even bringing up totality of the circumstances is to justify them acting like fucking barbarians over that knife that they did not know about at the time. So I think it's, again, this is disingenuous and he doesn't understand how objective reasonableness and the totality of circumstances work together.
An officer to have that leverage to say, if I believe that a face strike while I'm trying to pull a guy out of the car because he's non-compliant was justifiable for me to execute an arrest, an officer can utilize that force. Now, I don't know if you saw the body worn camera. They produced the body worn camera. Oh, that's crucial.
Okay.
They produced the body worn camera yesterday. The sheriff came out and articulated very clearly what was going on. And so at the very beginning, they pull up. He was non-compliant. He literally told him, "No, I'm not doing anything you told me to do." He shut the door, locked it, and said, "Send your supervisor. I'm not doing anything." The cop told him
That was a gross mischaracterization of what happened. We've seen the video. I'm not going to play it again, but that's that's not what happened.
7 times. You're under arrest for obstruction.
How old am I, and is it too late for John Lang Esquire? To be honest, I've considered going to law school because it wouldn't, I feel like it would be relatively easy for me anyway, because I built up this, body of knowledge in certain areas of the law. So the basic stuff would be pretty easy. But once you get into contract law, property law, all the other disciplines of law, that's time consuming, takes a lot of effort. I may very well go and get my JD, but just not take the bar, because I'm not interested in practicing law, but I am interested in studying law and maybe, having some kind of capacity or credential for that. But you probably won't be seeing John Lang Esquire anytime soon.
Obstruction. Get out of the car. Get out of the car. You're under arrest for obstruction. Everything the officer did was according to the law. It wasn't even a violent interaction initially. The officer was saying, "Sir, you're under arrest, sir." And the officer actually told him exactly why he pulled him over. He said, "You pulled you over for not having your headlights on in inclement weather." And
all this is just him building a narrative right now. Building a narrative to justify what he's about to say about the use of force.
And you didn't have a seatbelt on. And the guy was just completely combative for the first several minutes before he turned his camera on. Then when he turned the camera on, it's already has escalated. They have police officers that have responded. They have 6 or 7 officers that have now responded because this guy's non-compliant. These situations become very violent quickly. If you've ever been a cop, cops know a guy could be doing all this because he's going to pull a gun out. He won't pull off on the traffic stop. He's a wanted murderer. There's a lot of things that could.
The speculation is not a measure by which we determine the lawfulness of police action.
Be possibilities which will make officers heighten their suspicion when somebody's acting like this over a headlight infraction, which is a civil infraction. But then
you should do that, Electric.
When you go to extracting them from the car, I think the cop could have went without the palm strike to the face. But according to the law, according to what the attorney general said, nothing that he did was illegal and out of the bounds of use of force policy. But then when they pulled him out of the car, punching him in the face, it's not pretty. But we can utilize that level of force to execute an arrest. And wait, let me qualify that, because he's right. They can use that level of force during an arrest if the other person is actively resisting, if he presents some sort of physical threat. I don't know if you guys remember, but in my coverage of this, we looked at the use of force continuum, the triangle, right? Where you start with officer presence, communication, soft physical control, moves up to hard physical control, then less than lethal, and then deadly force. Okay? There's a progression that you have to follow here. Okay? You don't just get to jump from, based on my speculation, I think that this guy might be a dangerous threat to people. It's more than that. You saw when he punched him in the face when he was out of the car, he complied. So those things to the public may seem a little bit extreme, which I understand. But when you're a police officer and you deal with use of force every day, you realize a cop got to do whatever a cop believes is necessary to get this guy under control, because you don't know him.
Yeah, they pay the ultimate price for hesitation or making a mistake.
No. They're not the only ones who pay the ultimate price. And in fact, cops kill far more citizens than citizens kill cops. So there's no logical basis for making the point this guy's trying to make right now.
Mistake in assessing a situation. So for us to watch and say, shame on you, it's like, well, you know what? You don't see all the cops that were killed because they hesitated.
All the cops that were killed, like 20 of them? 20 of them in modern history? How many cops have been killed in the line of duty due to hesitation, due to, this line of thinking. I guarantee you that number is very low.
Cops see cops that are killed. They should send us a briefing every day, and when we go to the briefing meeting, the first 15 minutes of our shift, we do briefing, and then we go out and patrol. It's kind of like a little time to collect ourselves before we overlap.
Right.
But they should send us cops that get killed every day. So every day we get a list of all the police officers that have been killed and the circumstances that they've been killed in. And there's so many cops that have been killed on traffic stop in this very scenario.
Wow.
Where
Okay, I want to bring this up, and we're going to look at this. These are all the officers killed in the line of duty. Where'd it go? I just saw the number. For 2024. Here we go. And let's see. Gunfire, 49. For 2024. And a total of 167. So what he's saying here is just objectively untrue. There was a total amount, and I guarantee you that the statistics year over year don't venture very far from this total of 167. That's the total officer deaths in the line of duty. Okay? How the fuck are you getting briefs every single day of how police officers are killed, and a new one's killed every day, when there was only a total of there wasn't even enough to get through half the year of giving you everyday updates on people being killed in the line of duty. That's just not even a figure that you could even reach based on the statistics that we have. So I think that's just a lie, just a blatant lie.
a guy's non-compliant for what seems to be a basic traffic stop, he shuts the door and then he has a gun. And now he's got a reason to be hyped up, and cops get killed. They walk up to the window and they get killed. If you watch the video, the body camera that I shared, and I'm gonna do a breakdown of it today later, you'll see that the cop stands off to the back quarter panel of the car because he has to be in a tactical advantage because you don't know who this guy is. It's not reasonable to get mad over a headlight infraction. You know what I'm saying? So, but then what happened is he had drugs on him. He had a knife on the floorboard. He was driving on suspended license. He didn't have a seatbelt on, and he also didn't have his headlight on. He pled guilty to all of those. He pled guilty to not having a headlight and obviously resisting arrest, which he was charged for. He was found guilty. It was adjudicated. Everything was fine. 6 months later, he produced this video, obviously in order to make a little money, which
he says in order to make some money. I don't think that was the motivation. I talked about this before. Look, people who experience police misconduct, especially if they're not someone who's constitutionally informed in any capacity, they don't know what to do next. Okay? All they know is now I'm trapped into this system, and the only way I know how to get out is just do what they say. Come to the agreement, do the plea deal, do whatever my public defender says to do. He's not thinking, I've been a victim of police misconduct and now I need to take all these steps to ensure that people believe my story. He didn't think, oh, I need to go file a complaint on this officer. He may not have even known that that's a thing he could even fucking do. Regular people aren't walking around with the knowledge that they have paths to receive compensation, to get justice for the things that they endure at the hands of police. A lot of people just walk around because of people like Officer Tatum, thinking that they just have to listen to what the cops say no matter what. So to try to turn this onto McNeel, saying that, well, why did he wait so long to publish the body camera footage or his footage of the traffic stop? Because he didn't know what else to do. He didn't know, okay? He didn't know that suddenly it was his responsibility, according to the sheriff's office, to file a complaint and make sure something was done about that. And this is not common knowledge that people just walk around with. And it's not McNeel's fault for not immediately going and raising hell about all this. Electric says the public is so misinformed. There needs to be a class in high school with the civilian rights handbook. And yeah, I mean, I think that there should at least be like some kind of introductory class. Probably not my book as a textbook, but someone more qualified than me can write something about that. It's really hard to sue the cops in most states, even if you can find a lawyer. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
There's an interesting connection here, I think, between the uproar over what's happening in Gaza and this. It's it's a lot of people who don't have any interaction with bad people and force are just outraged by it being used in any capacity.
That is a wild ass parallel to draw. I don't have a particular critique about that analogy, but I think it's just stupid. He's trying to say that this is similar to the Israel-Gaza conflict because there's a lot of people who are misinformed walking around spouting narratives about what's going on in Israel and Gaza, and draw the parallel that that people generally don't know what police officers do, so they're largely uninformed and can't make a legitimate distinction about what's happening there. There's so much to unpack with that statement. I don't even know if I have the energy to do it. First of all, you're completely removing the element of narrative control from both of those arguments, okay? The reason people don't know what the fuck is going on in Israel and Gaza, and the reason people don't fucking know what the fuck is going on in with police officers is because there has been a concerted effort to make sure people don't know what the fuck is going on with either of those two things. When you have press conferences like the one that Sheriff Waters held about this entire interaction, where they're explicitly painting a narrative that is contrary to the objective facts of the situation, how the fuck do you expect people to know what the fuck is going on? And that's exactly the same thing that's happening with the whole Israel-Gaza conflict. There is so much smoke, so much misinformation and disinformation surrounding these topics that is being actively peddled by people in the influencer sphere, politicians, and everyone else in the industry that has something to gain from it, that it's almost impossible for the fucking public to be legitimately informed on anything. This is, I don't know if any of you have ever read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, but Orwell was wrong. He was wrong about his version of the dystopian future. And I think that Aldous was much closer to where we're at. We are not being tricked by a lack of information. We're not necessarily being tricked by a lack of transparency per se. Of course, that is a problem. But what the bigger problem is that we're so flooded with information that isn't true, that isn't real, that people can't trust, that it's impossible for reasonable people to come to reasonable conclusions about any fucking thing in this country anymore. Sorry that I went on that rant and it was such a small point that he made, but I just feel like we're at a place where we need to address this problem, this issue of there being so much information out there that it has completely blinded people from what is actually true. And a large reason for that is people like these three idiots right here.
And they can't wrap their heads around that there are people out there who have bad intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you go on a ride along. I tell anybody go on a ride along. Go on a ride along. And then if you were on a ride along, you would have been at that traffic stop and you can feel this emotion. Yeah. Like when your life is on the line, when you're watching it from the TV, you're like, oh.
If we have a bunch of emotional babies as police officers, that's a problem.
Oh man, they just rambling and they're scuffling a little bit. He slaps him in the face. He didn't. When you're physically there, your adrenaline is out of control because you think I can be killed at any moment right now. I can't see this guy's hands. He got the windows rolled up. Is this going to be my moment where I'm going to get killed and I'm never going home to my family?
Again, an extremely dangerous mindset to have as a police officer. Extremely dangerous mindset to have. Domineer, my man, thank you for the $5, brother. He says people are not resulting for all the facts. They're not waiting for all the facts about what is going on. They just accept what they hear. And that is one of the biggest problems, is that we have this perpetual cycle of echo chambers that people are just getting trapped in. And they can't think their way out of it. Largely because they don't have the tools and resources to be able to think their way out of it.
Why is this guy getting so worked up over a traffic stop? This is a warning. Hey, Jude, turn your lights on.
Right.
Is this guy going to produce a weapon? Is this a mass murderer? Is this guy running from the law? Did he just kill somebody? Like,
you don't know.
I felt it, bro, when I was a cop.
All the assumptions and speculation, man. It's crazy that you approach every interaction like that, but you have think about how many people have this mindset who have been a cop for 20 years. You mean to tell me you've been doing this for 20 years and you still haven't been able to get over the fear that maybe one day one of the literal thousands of police interactions you've already done would eventually result in your death? It's a dangerous mindset to have. Guilty until proven innocent. That's right, Timothy. Joanna says cops should be trained on when and how to end an encounter. They seem to always dig and escalate. That's a good point. And that, yeah, obviously that is a part of something that's very lacking from their training.
Feel this adrenaline where you kind of get afraid and then you get, kind of worked up, and palm striking in the moment seemed reasonable to you when you're worked up and this guy's uncompliant and there's so much going on.
If you get so worked up that you have to slap a man who's not resisting in any way, shape, or form, get a different job. You can't handle stress. Get a different job.
When you go look at it, you go, yeah, he could have went without the palm strike.
I mean, it's the same. The judgment, I think,
it's not a he could have went without the palm strike. The palm strike is the most unreasonable use of force, in my opinion. Everything after that, if you could play devil's advocate, you could put together a coherent argument for. But I hate that he's stuck on this. The slap was just a stunning mechanism. No stun was called for. No stun was called for. There was no reason to physically assault him.
Is rooted in the same place and animated by the same thing as the people who watch what we're talking about with Israel and Gaza. And they're like, these soldiers going in, why did they have to react that way? I feel like, well, does your experience as an officer provide you unique insight in the way you judge situations in the Middle East or what's going on in Israel?
What a softball. What a softball of a question. Of course it does, you idiot. What the fuck do you mean? Does your experience as an officer give you any insight on how officers are thinking? Of course it does. Why else would you be talking to this fucking idiot right now? This is a dumbass question.
And all of these things, you're like, I know that things aren't what they seem as they're portrayed on an algorithm, on a quick little footage from the outside. Having been a police officer, been in combat, been in these scenarios where the vibe and the energy is a very different thing than when you're watching a body cam footage or some kind of security drone. It's a very different scenario when you're in a booby-trapped house or you're doing a traffic stop which could end in disaster. Does that give you a unique insight, you think, in watching all these kinds of things that are portrayed?
In two ways it does. It desensitized me to knee-jerk emotional responses to violence.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's been advocating for this whole time. Sorry. He just said, being a police officer has desensitized me to having knee-jerk reactions to, let's just play it again. See exactly what he said.
Does that give you a unique insight, you think, in watching all these kinds of things that are portrayed?
In two ways it
politics?
does. It desensitized me to knee-jerk emotional responses to violence.
It desensitized him to knee-jerk emotional responses to violence. But that is exactly what he's justifying in the McNeel case. That was a complete knee-jerk emotional reaction that was violent. And he's saying that being a cop made him immune to that. Seems like it did the exact opposite, if you ask me.
Right. Because I know I've seen it and I've seen the worst of it. I've seen people literally decapitated. I've seen people get beat to death. Wow. I've seen people shot to death. And I physically see them take their last breath. It's an experience that when you have it, it changes the way you look at the world and the way you look at conflict. And I also know enough that you can't always go off of the first thing you see. You have to put things in context and try to put yourself in the position of everybody involved. And just imagine if you have never seen a person beheaded, like see a head over here and the body over here.
What does someone being decapitated have to do with police interactions and use of force or any of that? People are shitty. There are murderers out there. We all know this. You knew that before you became a cop. I mean, just the leap in logic is astounding.
Never seen people beat to death or what it looks like to be shot with a 7.62 from an AK-47 in the way a person looks when they've been ripped to shreds by this type of weapon, and you have to pick their body parts up.
I would be interested in knowing what the fuck he's talking about. Was somebody ripped to shreds with an AK during his tenure as a police officer? Surely that would have been pretty strong news.
And put them in the bag, and the emotional toll and the smell.
Put them in the bag.
Smell of gunpowder and flesh and all this.
What's up, Pariah? Good to see you here, dude.
If you have never felt that and been there, then you don't know the fear and the perception that an IDF soldier has against a person that's willing to do that to an innocent human being.
I'm not gonna say anything here because I'm really not trying to open the door to discussing the Israel-Gaza conflict on this channel. It's too inherently political, but it's hard to hold that back right now.
How much more are they willing to do this in combat with me? So the height of frustration, fear, anxiety.
That could be possible, Billy. I'm not sure.
All of that goes into the interactions that you see with soldiers fighting on the front lines. A lot of these people don't know how many IDF soldiers have been murdered in this conflict, even on October 7th. They don't know how much conflict it is when you go into Gaza, uncharted territory. You don't know who's a terrorist, who's a civilian. You don't know if it's booby trapped. Some of them are getting shot and killed. You don't know if they're shooting from buildings. You have no idea what's going on, but you don't have a choice. You are fighting on behalf of your country and the legacy of the existence of Israel. And
I'll tell you exactly why he left his police officer position. Antonius says, okay, 7 years. Why did he leave? He left because he became a Republican talking head. He left because he was saying that back in 2020 that it was impossible to, he was one of the people that was basically pushing the narrative that it's impossible to be a police officer nowadays. We're under too much scrutiny. And then he immediately got a job with Turning Point, which is a right-wing media conglomerate that promotes alternative media. And that's another thing about alternative media that I meant to mention the other day. It's not as alternative as they would like you to think. Most of the people who are in the political talking or the political commentary sphere their entire brands are owned by some giant corporation. It's not always their perspective that we see. We saw that with Tim Pool. I mean, he accidentally, maybe, I guess, took money from Russian assets because he has this chain of corporate connections where he literally gets paid to have a voice. It's more direct with Officer Tatum because he has direct connections with many, conservative think tanks. And his whole career, the trajectory of his career has been almost exclusively dominated by his relationship to these corporations. And I guarantee you, your favorite podcasters have deals with giant corporations that they don't want to fuck up. Whether it's through a sponsorship or through a direct ownership or equity stake. Alternative media is not as alternative as it would like you to believe. So just keep that in mind next time you're watching your favorite podcast and they have some kind of big guest on there, and they happen to be, when Theo Vaughn is talking to political leaders and fucking the Nelk boys are interviewing Netanyahu. That kind of shit is largely driven by corporate agenda and political gain. So, alternative media, not so alternative.
You are going to uncharted territory, in some cases to die. And nobody knows the fear of what is it like when I die. You see what it's like when he dies.
Unfortunately, nobody's fucking paying me worth of shit right now. I've been shadow banned on YouTube for going on like 2 years with ATA. And if you look at ATA, the 2023 stats, or from 2020 to 2023, and then you compare that to the last 2 years, it's abysmal. My viewership, impressions, revenue, all of that has dropped by 80% over just the last year. So nobody's fucking paying me, honestly. And I wouldn't change my content just for a fucking corporation anyway. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's a part of why I'm getting shit on. But it is what it is.
Died. You see what it's like with a gunshot wound to the head. What am I going to end up like him? What is it going to feel like when I take a shot to the neck or the chest and I'm bleeding out and what does my last words look like? That stuff is a lot more complicated than what the average person sitting on the couch is observing. But I will.
Honestly, guys, I'm tired of hearing this fucking idiot talk. I'm done with that guy. Starting OnlyFans. Yeah. Guess I'll start an OnlyFans where I give. Maybe I should start selling a fucking trifold like chili. I'd sell out, no joke, says Bubba. I was talking about that the other day, that if I really wanted to make some money, I would just become a fucking radical, commentary for either side, really. I mean, all you have to do to have a career in media nowadays is have a really super radical opinion on everything, whether it be left or right, and then start doing what I'm doing now, talking into a fucking microphone. And you'll find yourself a career somewhere along that path. Only Johns. I should get together all the Johns on YouTube that do this type of content. That would be funny. There's money in selling feet pics. I'm sure there is. I have Off the Handle says you should start. Is there a delay? Is there an audio delay going on? Or am I tripping? Anyway, Off the Handle says you should start an ATA officer presentation where you give the whole department's the book and an ATA certification. I have done several talks with police departments where they were having field training classes, and they invited me as a guest speaker to give a presentation to the officers about the First Amendment, civil rights, and how to interact with First Amendment auditors in particular. I have done that a few times, but for free, not for any money. Only Langs would get a lot of misclicks. Maybe. I should get that domain while I can. There's money in selling farts in a jar. Yeah, that's a good point, Billy. That's basically what most political talking heads are doing. They're just selling farts in a jar. Shields of Shame says, I think it's mostly because AdSense raised their ad revenue. It used to be cheap to run campaign ads, but not anymore. It's crazy expensive. Langs Wangs. That's funny. But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I could see if they raise the value of just political content, you know, if they have to pay more to run political ads, then I imagine that political content would probably be worth more as a result. See if the ACLU has a position. I don't think they have a position for a journalist. I don't know. I couldn't help them in any official capacity, I don't think. So, that's the thing about being a YouTuber too, is like you develop this super useless set of skills. Like I have a background in journalism, but working in the journalism industry is a joke, an absolute joke. When I first graduated journalism school, bear in mind I graduated with like $50,000 of student loan debt. And the first job I got offered was for $10 an hour. And that was being that was running the news department for a local paper. You don't get big bucks in the journalism industry until you're sitting at a desk as an anchor. And even then it's not that much money. It's enough to live on and have a career, but you also have to do a lot of compromising of your principles to be able to exist in that industry. And that's why I left anyway, was because I didn't agree with having to censor what I had to say about something because our advertisers didn't like it. But here I am having to do that all over again on YouTube. Thomas Taylor, good to see you, dude. He says YouTube also makes you somewhat unhireable to some companies. Yeah. I mean, you can't put YouTube on your fucking resume, you know? People don't take that seriously. Even in the industry, you know? So, you know, YouTube is not a credential. When all the money fades out, I guess, from ATA, which it's on a clear path for that to happen, I don't know how much longer it will be sustainable to keep producing content for that channel. But I'm sure at this rate, it's eventually going to end. Probably sooner than most of us think. But, you know, I have basically no control over that. So this is the nature of having a career through social media. It's very tentative. And at any moment, YouTube could just decide we're not pushing your content in the algorithm anymore and totally fuck you over. And that's basically what's happening to me. So, look at Coach Racket's video. I think I've heard that. What is that from? What about cloning your YouTube stuff to other platforms? I'm sure it would resonate. I've tried that before. First of all, TikTok does not like police-related content. Facebook has explicitly shadow banned my content, like very bad, to the point of where like videos there that used to reach millions of people now get hundreds of views. The only viable platform, I think, for my content is like Rumble, but I've tried posting there and it's just a fucking complete waste of time. Even when I had Rumble reach out to me and say, hey, let's start posting your content. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And they posted it and it did terrible. So I don't know, you know. Yeah, Rumble fucking sucks, to be honest. And basically no one watches it. Like even the biggest videos there get, 1 million views is insane. 700 videos in, he has $11.40. And that says a lot because you would think that videos like Shields of Shame makes would find a perfect home on a platform like Rumble. But fact is, they just spent all their money trying to do exclusive deals, and now they fuck themselves, and it's a shitty ass platform. I'll have to look at that, David. I don't think I heard of that. Maybe I was thinking of a different interaction. That was a fluke. Oh, he won some kind of $10 thing. So even the $10 he earned was just a fluke. That's hilarious. Yeah, I know that's the case. It's on Rumble for sure, because like you can make decent money with relatively low viewership on YouTube. I think that if you have about 50,000 subscribers or so, and you don't require a lot of infrastructure to produce your content, you can probably make a living at that point. So yeah, he earned $1.50. Yeah. Yeah, I've come to find that YouTube is basically the only platform where you can make a living with the type of content that I create. So I'm stuck here and stuck at the will of the algorithm and the YouTube gods as of right now. Why do you think you got shadow banned? ATA is such a good channel. Well, I'm saying that based on my analytics. You can see a very marked decrease in impressions. That despite, okay, I'll put it to you this way: my click-through rate, my watch time, the RPM, basically every metric that YouTube uses to evaluate content has been consistent throughout my entire time on YouTube. From the time I began uploading ATA videos, my click-through rate, watch time, RPM, all of these metrics have been the exact same, with the exception of one metric, which is the subscriber versus non-subscriber ratio, which essentially means how many people that watched this video were subscribed to your channel versus the amount of people who weren't subscribed but watched the video. In any video and any YouTuber could attest to this, generally a good performing video, it'll be a split where only about 20% of the video's viewership is made up from your subscribers. The other approximately 80% is made up by non-subscribers. People generally don't subscribe. That's not a common thing. So what that tells you is, if you have that reversed, where only your subscribers make up the majority of the viewership, that means that your video was never pushed to the algorithm to anyone who wasn't subscribed. And that has been the case for my channel for about 2 years now, with some minor exceptions. But even the videos that perform well have a very weird subscriber to non-subscriber distribution. Like even as of recently, like I did the video covering the law student who got caught up in a DUI. He did really well. That video got like 600,000 views, which is still low compared to what someone like Civilian Rights Lawyer gets nowadays. But if you look at the subscriber distribution on that video, it's almost 50-50, which is weird. It's almost like it had all the chops to get pushed to the algorithm, but for whatever reason, it wasn't allowed to fully go to a non-subscribed audience. Oh, Michelle, been sub to that channel for years. Yeah, a lot, and it's not something that people who are subscribed to my channel would even notice, because my videos would be served to you. They're just no longer being served to the public at large, which in my opinion is the more important audience for people who are uninformed about police interactions. How am I missing the fact that I'm